5 Live Formula One.
Good afternoon and welcome to live build-up to the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. It's race day, but we also only had qualifying a few hours ago as well. It's all been a little bit chaotic today in Sao Paulo. We've got a mixed-up grid, but it's Lando Norris on pole position. His title rival Max Verstappen starts down in 17th after a 5-place grid penalty. There's more weather expected to bed in across the course of the next 71 laps as well. It is still very wet on the circuit. The cars are all on the grid now. The grandstand's absolutely packed. Overcast, clouds, rain over the Sao Paulo circuit. And to guide you through all the action will be myself, Harry Benjamin, alongside me, the former Renault Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Jolyon, this is a crucial race for Lando Norris to secure maximum points to keep his title charge alive.
Norris starts on pole, Verstappen in 17th. The gap between the two is 44 points. You get 25 points for a win. You get 1 point for 10th place. So Verstappen has a lot to do to even get to the points, whereas Norris has George Russell in the Mercedes alongside him, and then plenty of sort of usual midfielders filling the space between himself and his title rival. The pressure is very much on Lando Norris to win this race, but also Max Verstappen's got to do something to save his weekend. This could be a critical time. This Grand Prix is going to be unmissable, I think.
Verstappen starting out of position, but we know he can normally carve his way up through the pack. But because we've got a bit of a jumbled up grid, is it going to be as easy? Because he's got Hamilton down there in 14th, and then he's also Leclerc's 6th. You know, we've got a Fernando Alonso. Never rule him out in these kind of conditions. He starts 9th, so he's got a few big names to pass quickly early doors.
He does, and no one will make it particularly easy. But Verstappen has also got just a huge amount of innate natural talent in these conditions. The drivers have all made it round to the grid. Alex Albon isn't starting. He had a big crash in qualifying earlier on. The Williams team haven't repaired that car, so that's 1 place up for Verstappen, who will be 16th. Carlos Sainz is starting from the pit lane, so that's another car that wasn't repaired in time. But the rest of the field was struggling to make it round to the grid. There were huge moments, even on the intermediate track. There's going to be spray involved. It's going to be treacherous for Verstappen in the midfield, but he has got the skill set, the talent to cope with these conditions, as he so often does. And I'd be surprised if he cannot make it through towards the front of the race at some point.
Well, the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson is also with us in the commentary box. Andrew, what are you expecting across the course of the next 71 laps? Will we get a full Grand Prix?
Lots of action, Harry. It's dried up quite a lot since qualifying. People aren't wearing their coats in the grandstand anymore, but we are expecting more rain. Just in terms of people in front of Verstappen, there are 3 drivers who will just wave him by. That's his teammate Sergio Perez, who's 12th, and the 2 RB drivers who are 3rd and 5th. Obviously Lando Norris probably wants to stay out of the way of those 2 guys, because you never quite know what Red Bull are going to get up to with their drivers. But I think it's such a mixed up grid, it's hard to believe there won't be absolutely loads of action. I would expect safety cars, crashes. We had 5 red flags in qualifying, and I'm like Jolyon. I think I'd be surprised if Verstappen's not on the podium at the end of this race.
Okay, a podium prediction then for Verstappen come the end of the 71 laps. So, I mean, we listened to some of the radios of the drivers as they were coming in to line up onto the grid ahead of the national anthem. A lot of them saying, we caught Nico Hülkenberg's radio saying, actually guys, it is drying up, it's quite bright. So one thing to keep on top of, John, is going to be that crossover period, isn't it? From, I presume they'd start on the intermediate tyre going on to a slick.
Yeah, it looks like it will be an intermediate start. Certainly the track's still fairly damp, but nowhere near the full wet, which was used at the start of qualifying. And then you're looking at race strategy being a defining part of this. Overtaking, keeping your racecraft going, but with all eyes on changing tyres at the right time. It's going to be race defining as well. There's 71 laps, it's a long Grand Prix. Whether you start on the intermediates and you look to bolt on a set of slicks, you gain so much time when you go for slick tyres. But there's rain in the air as well. There is rain coming shortly. How much rain? And will it be enough to really wet the track and maybe necessitate a full wet at some point? Or will it be about keeping your intermediates in check so you don't have to make a pit stop at all? There's a lot going on with this race in terms of strategy. So a bit of time management will be in order for the drivers. as well as being in the cut and thrust of some pretty savage wheel-to-wheel battles, particularly in that midfield.
Race suits being zipped up then as they begin to step into the cockpit of their car. George Russell is looking rather cool with his shades on, scooters to the pit wall, drops it off before he hops over and saunters over to his car. Russell starting on the front row alongside Lando Norris as Lance Stroll lowers himself down into his Aston Martin. Both Aston Martins crashing in qualifying, both being repaired and taking to the start of the field. Johnny, can you put us in the driver's seat for a lap around Sao Paulo? What is it like? We know these conditions make it tricky, but where is the action? Where can we see the overtakes coming?
Well, the first sector is all in the Senna S, it's called. It's a three-part chicane, left-hander, that brings you into a sort of right and then extending left-hander of turn 3. That's where most of the action happened earlier on as well. There were rivers across the track and the apexes of turn 2 and 3, the right and then the next left. And there's a straight on the end of that, which leads to another overtaking opportunity at Tecido de Largo, the descent of the lake down at turn 4. That's your overtaking opportunity into turn 1 and 4, but it's also your best chance to drop the car and hit the barriers, as plenty of drivers did earlier on. Then you've got a middle sector that's predominantly tight and twisty. It's difficult to do too much overtaking, but in these conditions anything is possible. Before you get to the next big challenge, the final corner, Magulio left-hander at turn 11 goes over the crest. It's flat out in the dry. It's not in these conditions. It's a bit sketchy, as Fernando Alonso found out earlier on. And you get to the final corner, turn 12, which is a corner called Junsao. You come through there, left-hander, just over 90 degrees. So it's a medium-speed corner, which leads to a long exit over the start-finish straight, which is curved, it's uphill, and it's really treacherous in these conditions. But to be able to overtake, you need to be keeping your foot in as much as possible over some potential puddles, some standing water, and get your straight-line speed up as high as possible for that braking zone at turn 1. Turns 1 and 3, sectors 1 and 3 are your overtaking places. The middle sector is where the bulk of the lap time is, where most of the corners are.
Comprehensive run through a lap. Thank you very much, Jolyon Palmer.
You asked for it.
I know I did, and I got exactly what I asked for as the final belts are going on to Lewis Hamilton, who is sat in his cockpit. I mean, let's talk Lewis Hamilton. He's starting down in 14th. The sprint was a day to forget as well for him. Ended up finishing where he started in 11th, but lost places off the line. And we all thought that the wet weather that we got in qualifying earlier, that is when we see the field almost equalised and the real heroes come to the fore. But Lewis Hamilton didn't turn up.
Is that a really terrible weekend? In dry conditions, and the sprint was struggling for pace. We thought when it rained, he was actually the driver that most wanted to get out there. He gate crashed an interview with Formula 1 boss Stefano Domenicali yesterday saying we should have run, and you thought this is Lewis that's G'd up in conditions that he's always good in, but he wasn't earlier on. He was out in Q1, starts 14th because Albon and Sainz have had issues and Albon's not starting, but nonetheless Lewis has got plenty of work to do, and we'll be hoping his car feels and behaves quite differently in the race than it did a few hours ago in qualifying. He will be Max Verstappen's first big test. Verstappen starts effectively 16th with no Alex Albon. Hamilton is effectively 13th from the 14th spot on the grid, and that'll be the first big one for Verstappen to deal with.
Let's just head to the midfield for a moment, although in this case they've not qualified there. The two RB drivers, we mentioned Tsunoda gets a best ever career start of 3rd. His teammate Liam Lawson doing a great job and backing him up in 5th. And that's actually crucial for RB. They may not finish there. It's probably unlikely they'll finish there, but certainly good points are on offer for them because they are embroiled in a really tight battle with Haas. They're actually 10 points behind Haas right now. Haas in 6th, RB in 7th in the Constructors' Championship, and the two Haas cars are all the way down the order.
It's a great opportunity for some constructors' position changes. RB, they've been struggling. Daniel Ricciardo was axed a few races ago. It was a slightly controversial decision for them to get rid of an 8-time Grand Prix winner in the middle of a year. No big farewell to a charismatic Aussie. But in has come Liam Lawson. He's doing a tremendous job. The Kiwi driver starts 5th. Yuki Tsunoda starts from a career best 3rd. These guys are punching well above their weight, and they'll be hoping, with who's around them, to maybe cling on to a top 3, certainly a top 5 position in this Grand Prix, which will put them potentially back ahead of Haas. Same with Esteban Ocon and Alpine, looking to score big points for minnow teams. They're 9th out of 10 in the Constructors' Championship, but Ocon starts 4th. These could be big paydays for some of the lesser runners.
There is only a handful of points as well separating Williams and Alpine. As you mentioned, Esteban Ocon starting in 4th. He was flying all throughout qualifying, really enjoying these mixed conditions, and what could have been an absolutely amazing day for the Williams team has really turned into a bit of a disaster. 2 crashes, one for Colapinto, one for Albon, but the crash so big for Alex Albon, who made it into the top 10 shootout, but ruled him out of the Grand Prix. It's a big blow to them.
Yeah, I mean, he completely destroyed the car, hit the brakes for turn 1, you're at high top speed at that part, you're off the back of that long curve straight, and he hit the brakes on the white line, lost control, and he was running 2nd at the time in a Williams. It was going to be a giant killing day for him, but in the end it was a car killing day for him, and there's no Grand Prix start for him. His teammate has had so much support this weekend. The Argentinian Franco Colapinto, who's only done a handful of Grand Prix so far, he also crashed in qualifying, starts down in 15th position and has plenty of work to do. But Williams would love to get something on the board with Colapinto. He's got a lot of fans that have come over the border from Argentina, and they need it, because Ocon and Alpine are looking like they're going to score some points in those minor battles.
Yeah, this could be a really big day up and down the Constructors' Championship. There will be, we believe, a gap where Alex Albon originally qualified down in 7th. We believe he is still registered to be there, but will not be taking in the Grand Prix, so there'll be a gap in between Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri. And let's talk a bit about Ferrari, shall we? Because Charles Leclerc, well, he had an opportunity to really put himself up there in the battle for pole position, came home 6th in the end for qualifying.
Yeah, struggled a bit for pace as well. Neither Ferrari looked particularly hooked up, but I mean, in truth, none of the front runners looked consistently hooked up. Verstappen and Perez were both gutted to be out in Q2 earlier on. Norris was surprised that he managed to even escape Q1 and get it to pole position. Hamilton, we've spoken about, was out. Russell starts on the front row. He was struggling at times as well. Everyone's floundering at various points. So Leclerc starts 6th and is still in contention, because 3 of the cars ahead of him have barely scored anything for the last dozen Grand Prix.
Let's just remind you of how the standings are in the drivers, with a 44-point lead is Max Verstappen ahead of Lando Norris. Then comes Charles Leclerc in 3rd, with Oscar Piastri 4th and Carlos Sainz in the top 5 of the Drivers' Championship. And then over in the Constructors, after the sprint, McLaren have a 34-point gap over Ferrari, still chasing in 2nd. Red Bull, after last weekend, knocked down to 3rd. Then comes Mercedes and Aston Martin. They're a little bit adrift in no man's land, really, in 4th and 5th. RB are just behind Haas, who are 6th. RB 10 points behind Haas as it currently stands. Williams 8th, Alpine 9th, and Sauber still the only team yet to get off the mark. Looking at a pointless run for them. They've still got a few rounds left to try and get something on the board. Could, in these kind of conditions, score points for Sauber, because Bottas managed to qualify in 11th, so he's on the periphery. Behrman first.
So we're expecting more rain 20 minutes into the race. Then it will a fairly short period, and then a brief period where it's not raining, and then a much heavier amount of rain coming after that.
Oh, well, there's a nice comprehensive run through from Mark Slade, Oliver Behrman's engineer. So 20 minutes of no rain, which means the track will get quite dry for these intermediates. No one will pit at that point. Everyone starts on the inters, and it's going to be race to the rain, and then whether you want to put on another set of inters if the rain will be heavy enough for wets. But I think it's going to deter anyone from trying to get a slick tyre on. And then it sounds like there's a bigger load of rain, which we've had already this weekend, and that will change things later on. So it's going to be a very dynamic Grand Prix. The race is going to start from the grid, as it is usually the case, and the race start is going to be so critical.
Yeah, you'll be a brave man if you want to start on a slick tyre for the beginning of this race. 71 laps around this circuit. Just to pick up on that last point, this is the kind of race where a Sauber, like a Valtteri Bottas in 11th, could finally get some points in the bag.
They'll be hoping for chaos. No points and no hope in recent races. They haven't finished in the top 13 since the Spanish Grand Prix in June. It's been a horrible, horrible year for Sauber, but Bottas starts 11th, and he'll be hoping for a wet weather miracle today.
Yeah, it's actually Sauber Chief Operating Officer Mattia Binotto's 55th birthday today, so hopefully he'll be treated with a present maybe of a point or two, but it'll be a long way into this race as it continues to unfold. The grid slowly then beginning to clear. We are nearly set for 71 laps around this Sao Paulo circuit in Interlagos. It'll be Lando Norris with the best view in the house. We'll have 18 cars on the grid, no Alex Albon. Carlos Sainz from the pit lane will run you through it in full. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be crucial for Norris in the title fight. It's time for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. His 8th career pole, Lando Norris starts from the very front. Alongside of him will be George Russell in the Mercedes. Yuki Tsunoda in the RB lines up third, ahead of Esteban Ocon's Alpine from fourth, with Liam Lawson in the other RB rounding out the top 5. Charles Leclerc for Ferrari is 6th. Alex Albon was to be 7th. He will not take part. There is a gap there. Piastri starts in 8th, ahead of Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. The Aston Martins bookending the top 10. Then it's Bottas in 11th, ahead of Perez. Pierre Gasly starts 13th, ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Ollie Behrman deputising for Kevin Magnussen, who's unwell this weekend, starts 15th, ahead of Franco Colapinto in 16th. Max Verstappen, with his 5-place grid penalty, goes from 17th on the grid, ahead of Nico Hülkenberg's Haas, and Zhou Guanyu in the Sauber will be 19th and last. Carlos Sainz starts from the pit lane. Lap then underway, and already we have got a car spinning into the wall. It's Lance Stroll who finds himself off at turn 4. It looks like he's had a bit of a skirmish with the wall, but no major damage to the front nose. We're just about to see what happened again, Jolien.
So, he's just locked the rear brakes, but I wonder if that's a mechanical issue for Stroll. It was a very strange sudden lock out of nowhere. The rear axle seized up, and Stroll from 10th on the grid was sent spinning and clipped the barrier, and he is stranded down towards the back of the field. He's not moving yet, so we may well get an aborted start.
Not what Aston Martin needed, not what Lance Stroll needed. They both started from the pit lane, and actually, well, he has got going, but now he's found himself in the gravel on the exit of turn 4, and that looks like a fairly beached Aston Martin to me.
So he's tried to get going and driven through the gravel and got stuck in the gravel. So that is going to be a non-starter for Lance Stroll, who says he's beached. He is getting out of the car, steering wheel off. The man in 10th place will not start the Grand Prix, alongside the man starting 7th, Alex Albon, who was never going to start the Grand Prix. So it's another place for Max Verstappen, but we will have, first of all, another formation lap.
Yeah, we will. Headrest being removed then for the Canadian Lance Stroll, who turned 26 this week. He qualified 3rd here last year, finished the race in 5th. And how quickly the tables turn. But meanwhile, on the starting grid, Lando Norris is already lining up on the pole position spots on the right-hand side of the grid. George Russell alongside him. I absolutely expect there to be an aborted start, but nothing quite yet has come through. The lights usually go yellow on the gantry and start flashing. Carlos Sainz waiting patiently in the pit lane for more information.
It will be an aborted start from where Stroll is down at turn 4 and 5. He's actually now out of the car on the side of the track, so there's no way they can start the race. It is now officially an aborted start, and I think that may well have been a mechanical failure for Stroll. That was a very strange looking incident, and he was one of those drivers that crashed earlier on, so possibly Aston Martin rushing the car back together. All was not well, and Stroll has done three corners of the formation lap and then found a problem.
So aborted start then. They had all the remaining runners made it back round to the grid, but they'll get going again. That knocks off a lap of the race, so we now go down to 70 laps of racing once they come back around again onto the starting grid. But this is for the drivers to get to grips with. Suddenly it's a change of gear for them.
Yeah, it's something that alters the procedure that you're so used to, building up the tension, doing your burnouts, getting on the grid, laser focus, and then another delay. There is a JCB out now trying to clear Stroll's car. The marshals are still round it. It might still be another few minutes before they can move that one away, so it's going to be a little bit more of a delay. difficult for the drivers to keep the tyre temperature in. And if we've got a stalled Valtteri Bottas on the grid.
Yeah, there's a big old gap between Hamilton, who's already down to turn 4, and Bottas, who has just stopped on the grid. Nobody wanted to go past him. I don't know why they're all stopped waiting.
So,
has something come up on the gantry, meaning they can't go?
Colapinto stopped, and Verstappen has stopped as well from 17th on the grid. Now Bottas goes, and now they're all going. So, something strange.
Colapinto is also parked at the wrong grid slot.
Yeah, all sorts of procedures have been breached here, Max. We're looking into it. So should not have started.
Yeah, you have to wait for a green light.
Okay, so chaos even before we start this Grand Prix. Verstappen saying that Colapinto lined up in the wrong grid spot, but the start was aborted anyway for the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, who is now out of this race. So we come back around again, and indeed, Norris is already making his way back round to the grid, but Max Verstappen's only just got going.
So Norris is now nearly a lap ahead of the field, who was just starting their formation lap. And what's just happened there is some of the drivers weren't ready for that to go. And what we've just heard on the radio, Gianpiero Lambesi to Max Verstappen saying Norris should not have started that second formation lap. He should have waited for the green light. Has he gone too soon? Separately, Colapinto has started in the wrong place. We're just getting a replay of him lining up, and he's moved too far forwards.
Yeah. He's driven forward into the space above him. Behrman is ahead of him on the right-hand side. I wonder if somebody else was parked in the wrong slot. So somebody maybe parked in Albon's empty 7th slot, because really Colapinto shouldn't have been able to pull forward.
Yeah, what's happened is you've not got Albon on the grid. You've also not got Stroll on the grid. So Colapinto is on the right side of the grid for him, but someone else ahead has not started in the right place either. So carnage at the start of this race. One car is out on top of the car that's not starting. Sainz is still in the pit lane, and now we have the cars forming up once again, and I don't know if we're going to get going this time or if there'll be another. There is another aborted start.
And I tell you what, if Norris has gone and there's been a yellow light, Red Bull are definitely going to protest. Here's Verstappen's radio.
Yeah, this mess was caused from the front. We're just trying to unpick it. You did the right thing.
GP on the radio again, and we are going to get another aborted start because the mechanics are coming back onto the grid, indeed running down to the Aston Martin station there.
It's a 10-minute delay officially now. So Red Bull are going to be looking very carefully at whether Lando Norris should have gone round for that second start, or whether he was due to stay there, as is now the case, and they're all switching off the engines and getting ready again. It's a technicality from Norris on pole position. It's not something that comes up very often at all. You get an aborted start and another formation lap. It's something the drivers should be swatting up on, and that is going to be it is now noted an incident involving Lando Norris for a starting procedure infringement.
Right then, so we haven't actually had any green flag laps yet for this race, after initially an aborted start due to Lance Stroll spinning off, finding the barrier and then finding the gravel and getting his car beached on the initial formation lap, and then carnage in terms of the aborted start and its procedure going forward, with a couple of gaps having to be left on the grid. No Albon and now no Stroll, causing a bit of chaos further back in the pack.
So the rules say that in the case of an aborted start, all cars should return to the grid, and then they will be informed of the likely delay using the official messaging system. The starting procedure will begin again at the 10-minute signal. So yes, Norris should have just sat where he was, no question about that.
So Norris is under investigation. This is, I have to say, it's a fairly unprecedented situation where there's been an extra formation lap that the race director did not intend. Everyone else then followed Norris off until you got to Valtteri Bottas in 11th, who has been on the front of the grid many times and was fully aware of the rule. But everyone else also, as Lando Norris did, bolted off, led by the McLaren driver on pole position. He shouldn't have gone, and he has gone. That is a technicality, and he's under investigation before the race has even begun.
I don't see how he can't get a penalty for that. Just a question of what the penalty is, maybe 5 seconds or something like that. There's also issues with the people in the incorrect starting location, whoever they were, because they've broken the next article in the sporting regulations as well. So it's pretty clear there's 3 or 4 drivers potentially who all could have some kind of penalty, which all plays into Max Verstappen's hands if that's the case.
and Norris is now officially under investigation. So this chaos weekend has taken another turn before we've even had a second's racing today.
That's actually quite poor of Lando Norris. I remember a story about Lewis Hamilton when he first started at McLaren. Ron Dennis gave him the regulations and said, learn them. It's the driver's responsibility.
Well, will that come back to bite Lando Norris? What kind of penalty might he receive during the race if we get this going? Of course, those starting at the front would not be as familiar with starting at the front, the likes of Tsunoda and Liam Lawson following suit, but it's in the regulations, and actually we're getting a brilliant shot of inside race control, which you don't normally see, with our arms crossed from the race director and watching all the screens in front of them to see what on earth has just unfolded. And what is happening now? What is happening now is that the mechanics and the team members will come back onto the circuit to put the tyre blankets back on, jack the cars up, get the fans into the air intakes to try and cool down the temperatures and keep things ticking over for when we do get started again in the 5 or so minutes time. But still, overcast overhead, dark grey clouds still looming, and the idea was to bring this race forward so we could avoid the worst of the weather, but this is only delaying us further as we get perilously towards more bands of heavy rain that are coming our way. But for a driver, Johnny, if this is you in the car, are you thinking, what on earth is happening, or are you just trying to blur that all out?
What I'm wanting, if I'm at the front of the grid, is a race start, and as soon as there's an aborted start or anything that is irregular, you are now trying to think back in your mind as to what the regulations are, what you should and shouldn't do. Team radio communication on the formation lap is very minor and only really not car procedural but overall procedural things. Obviously Norris has not been told anything at this point apart from the aborted start sign on top of the lights and the flashing yellow. He then should have waited. He's not waited, and that is why the investigation is now ongoing for him. For the rest of the field now, I think the chaos serves to help those that want to take advantage of a messy race. You mentioned Valtteri Bottas earlier on, starting 11th, which is 10th without Alex Albon. Other drivers around him getting a penalty is good. Maybe for Yuki Tsunoda or Esteban Ocon, those higher up. If Norris is now under investigation, he could potentially get a serious penalty for this.
He could, but what about all the other guys who followed him around? Exactly, are they all going to get a penalty?
That's the tricky point, isn't it?
Because Verstappen also went through the orange lights.
So Norris led the charge, but then everyone followed him, so they all could have not gone through. It's like if one car goes through a red light at the end of the pit lane and then they all go through, it's not just the first car that gets penalised, it's everyone that goes through the red light at the end of the pit lane. We're into uncharted territory. There's no precedent for this.
Just when you think this weekend couldn't get more chaotic, it does so without even a full racing lap completed, and now the drivers just having to sit and wait in the cockpits of their car surrounded by their mechanics. Oscar Piastri's just taken this moment to have a little drink as well, being passed his water bottle inside his cockpit. Piastri starts down in 8th. We'll have a empty grid spot to the side of him because no Alex Albon. So just a reminder of the grid again, if you feel like you've gotten confused in this formation lap, aborted lap chaos. Lando Norris is on pole alongside George Russell. Then it's Tsunoda, Ocon, Lawson is the top 5. Then comes Charles Leclerc. Then there's a gap where Alex Albon should be. He's not part of this race, so there is a gap. Then comes Oscar Piastri. Alonso is 9th. Then there's 10th place, which is now empty. No Lance Stroll. He crashed on the formation lap. So then we go to Bottas in 11th, Perez, Gasly, Hamilton, Behrman is 15th. Then it's Colapinto. Verstappen still starts 17th. Nico Hülkenberg behind him. Zhou Guanyu 19th, and the last car on the grid with Carlos Sainz going from the pit lane.
I wonder if Sergio Perez moved into Lance Stroll's grid spot, and that is where the Colapinto confusion came from afterwards. It was certainly on the inside where Stroll then vacated by, I've just seen a replay of him. He had the moment at turn 4 and then just drives into the gravel, and that is why we had the aborted start. So Stroll had the car moving, and rather than keep it on the asphalt, he was in the tarmac runoff area, tried to get back onto the track through the gravel and got himself beached. That's why we're now into 17 cars on the grid. Sainz will start from the back from the pit lane, and Max Verstappen is picking up a few places.
And well, the grandstand's still absolutely packed out. Over 290,000 people attending this race across the weekend. Of course, those who turned up for qualifying yesterday, well, a shame they didn't get any running there, but at least they were treated to a sprint race, and that action that brought, of course, that in much different conditions. That was dry conditions. We saw great use of the DRS, but we won't get that, of course, in these wet conditions once we do go racing.
The Sunday ticket holders have done well, haven't they?
Done very well.
An unbelievably dramatic qualifying earlier on, a long qualifying session as well with plenty of red flags, and now a race that feels like there's something special brewing.
I quite like qualifying on the same day as the Grand Prix.
It's fun, isn't it?
Maybe if we're pitching format ideas.
I'm all for the 2-day weekend.
We know you are.
I'm all for reducing the practice time, which we had here anyway. We only had 1 hour of practice and we were straight into a qualifying. Saturday, Sunday, it's been fun.
I was working this out, you could even do it with a sprint weekend. Rock up Saturday morning, 1 free practice, sprint qualifying, sprint race all in one day, Grand Prix qualifying the next morning.
Why don't they just turn up and do a race, Andrew? Just turn up, do the race, go home.
I like that. I'm all for it. I think the less practice we have, the better. The more unknowns for us, the more unknowns for the teams, the more unknowns for the drivers. And it sets us up for an intriguing race, no matter how many laps it is or how many points are up for grabs. And if the weather plays havoc, it could lead to jumbled up order, like the fact we've got Tsunoda, Ocon and Lawson up inside the top 5, where I could be looking at career best results.
I do think the sprint format works infinitely better when you have a dry sprint qualifying and a sprint. It's effectively a whole new circumstance when you have a wet qualifying and then a wet Grand Prix. Sometimes the sprint can be a precursor to the Grand Prix. When you see the pecking order of the cars, you see what the tyres are going to do, you see the overtaking and so on. But the game is so different right now to the sprint that was yesterday morning. 24 laps in the dry, McLaren team orders at the front, all of that chat. That's out the window now. It's a new game, it's a new day, and it's plenty of drama.
There certainly is, but we are hopefully about to get going again with the formation lap in around about 30 seconds time. So initially we were all geared up, ready to go for 71 laps of racing action. We got the formation lap underway, but then Lance Stroll losing his Aston Martin into the braking zone of the left-hander of turn 4, finding the barrier, skidding along it, and then ending up beached in the gravel. That led to an aborted start, and then chaos with an infringement by Lando Norris for the aborted lap, heading off the grid too soon, and cars following him, that leading to some staying on the grid, an absolute confusion, and then in the end, well, the proper procedure being followed with team members, mechanics, and the message coming across that we would have a 10-minute delay, which we're now just about getting towards the end of. But we will have no Albon, no Stroll, and Carlos Sainz from the pit lane, as they do finally now set off for the formation lap once more.
And still Norris is under investigation. It should be a fairly cut and dry breach of the rules and a penalty to be applied, but they've had 10 minutes of this and still not worked out what happened. So it's going to be crucial for Norris to keep the lead at the start, because if there's a 5-second penalty potentially for this, he'll try and overcome that, pull away from the likes of Russell and Tsunoda, and then serve that and maintain the lead of the race. But we still don't know what the penalty is, if there is one, for Norris at the front.
Hamilton slow away off the grid, so too Verstappen, just trying to allow themselves some room in front. What are the drivers actually doing on the formation lap, Jody?
Generating tyre temperature, getting the brakes up to temperature as well, and then on a day like this, feeling where there's a bit of grip again. Is it inside? Is it outside? We're getting close to that rain period now as well. We are pretty much in the part where rain is expected. In fact, Lando Norris has got on the radio and said it is now spitting, so something else for everyone to contend with. It just doesn't stop.
Right, fasten your seatbelt, sit down, grab a drink, because I think we're in for a frenetic 70 laps of racing. We -1 because we had that first aborted start.
I'll tell you what, fair play to the weather forecasters. They said the rain was going to come at 12:50, didn't they? And here we are 2 minutes before 12:50 and it started to rain.
They were weirdly good earlier on as well, weren't they?
Pretty spot on so far, and this is the sound of Hamilton coming through the right-hander of turn 10, trying to get his tyres up to temperature. Of course, a 3-time winner around this track, a 3-time pole sitter. He even drove Ayrton Senna's 1990 McLaren a little earlier on in the gap between qualifying and the race. So he's had a brilliant race in what is really a second home race for Lewis Hamilton, but so far it has not got his way. He'll be hoping to try and claw his way up through the grid from 14th, but it's Norris Norris on pole position, then moving around onto the start-finish straight now and lining up on the grid. Alongside him is George Russell in the Mercedes, as rain is now starting to come down. Tsunoda third, Ocon fourth, Lawson fifth, Leclerc is sixth, gap in seventh place. Then it's Piastri eighth, Alonso ninth, another gap where Lance Stroll should be in 10th. Then comes Bottas, Perez, Gasly, Hamilton is 14th, behind him Behrman, Colapinto is 16th, Verstappen starts 17th, Hulkenberg is 18th, Joe 19th, and Carlos Sainz from the pit lane.
There's proper rain coming down as well. Short run to the first corner, and the drivers have got to work out how much grip there's going to be when they first hit the brakes.
196 metres from pole to the braking zone of turn 1. Joe Guanyu lines up in the final spot on the grid. The green flag flies at the back. It's Lando Norris on pole position, George Russell alongside. It's all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing in Sao Paulo, and it's a tentative start from the front runners, but it's Russell who gets the better of Norris, sliding down the inside to take the lead down through the centre S's with 3 wide, with Ocon trying his way around the RB, but it's Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari who gets the better as well, slots in behind Ocon, who's making progress, but it's Russell who leads down towards turn 4.
Great start from George Russell, just got the traction and the drive on the inside line, and there was nothing that Norris could do. He falls down to second, and suddenly that clear air in front of him has vanished. Charles Leclerc also gaining a place in the Ferrari, he's up to 5th.
Lawson is the RB that's lost position to the Ferrari, and he's now having to look in his mirrors at the other McLaren of Oscar Piastri as we finally get racing underway. And Lewis Hamilton trying to find his way around the outside of Gasly, ducks to the inside, but he has to defend because Max Verstappen is right there with him, forces Verstappen to the edge of the track round the right-hander as we now get in to the middle sector of this lap.
Verstappen's already made a handful of places. He's ahead of his teammate, he's ahead of Ollie Behrman, and he's up into 11th position on the first half of a lap. Good start from Hamilton as well. They're 10th and 11th. Spin for Perez.
Spin for Perez out of the right-hander and finds himself on the grass, spins back around and is able to get going again, but he lost it as the rain continues to pelt down here. Green flag back out for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix as we come to the end of lap 1 of 70. It's George Russell who leads Lando Norris. Yuki Tsunoda held on to third after pressure from Esteban Ocon, going 3 wide through the centre S's. Then comes Leclerc, Lawson down to 6th, Piastri is 7th, Verstappen is making moves, and another one gets himself already up into the point scoring positions, down the inside of Hamilton, out through the centre S's, through the left-hander of turn 3. Verstappen now ahead of Hamilton.
It's a stunning first lap from Max Verstappen. 7 places gained now with a scythe down the inside of Hamilton, and there was nothing that Lewis Hamilton could do to stop Max Verstappen coming through. Up into the top 10 already, and he means business today, doesn't he? How many times does he make light work of these race starts?
1.2 seconds back is Lando Norris in second place from George Russell. The rain still coming down hard. Everybody out there on intermediate tyres. Russell, Norris, Tsunoda, Ocon, Leclerc the top 5. Lawson, Piastri, Alonso, Gasly, Verstappen the top 10. There are your point scorers. Hamilton, that's the sound you can hear now, trying to stay with Verstappen in 11th. Behind him is Franco Colapinto. The 2 Haas cars, Behrman and Hulkenberg 13th and 14th. Bottas has lost positions down to 15th ahead of his teammate Joe. Sainz from the pit lane up to 17th ahead of Sergio Perez with its spin on lap 1, able to get going again and now has to close up to the back of the grid. No Albon, no Stroll, 18 cars remain in this race.
Russell has a nice 2-second margin already ahead of Lando Norris. There's quite a lot of spray on the main straight, there's some rain coming down, but there's still grip on the surface as Tsunoda's third, Ocon fourth, has a bit of pressure from Charles Leclerc behind, and Hamilton's not left Max Verstappen yet, he's still with the Dutchman. They're 10th and 11th.
The 2 Haas cars as well, really fighting each other hard, coming down into the centre S's. Behrman ahead of Hulkenberg. Behrman not afraid to get his elbows out against his more experienced teammate Nico Hulkenberg. Bear in mind, Behrman got the call at about 6:30 in the morning on Friday to replace Kevin Magnussen, who was unwell. Behrman into the left-hander of turn 4, holding on to that position. 13th and 14th for Haas at the current moment. No points on the board for them, as actually Carlos Sainz, I think, was just told on the radio, it is heavy rain out there.
In sector 3, that is where the leaders are now heading towards. George Russell with 1.7 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. Then there's a gap back to Yuki Tsunoda, who's still holding third place ahead of a train of Ocon and Leclerc, who we ride on board with in towards turn 10. And we're heading to the rain. Russell still leading. The drivers have got to feel their way. It's so difficult when the track is getting wetter and the grip level is getting taken away from you to know how much caution to give without just being passed easily by the cars behind.
This the sound of that Ferrari of Charles Leclerc coming through the final two left-hand as you approach the start-finish straight, which isn't really even straight. Slight left curve, the pit lane entry to your left, across the line for Leclerc, closing in on Esteban Ocon into the braking zone of the first of the Senna S's, plunges downhill through the left-hander, then out the right-hander, round the left-hander of turn 3. Leclerc not able to close in dramatically on Ocon, who's holding firm right now in his Alpine in 4th.
So Max, this increased rain intensity will last around 2 or 3 minutes.
So it's just a short burst of rain that we're getting. It is making it look a lot wetter, but the track grip is still there, and Norris is on the fastest lap on the last lap of the race. 1.5 seconds now. He's behind George Russell, and Verstappen is still in 10th and not making immediate inroads onto the back of Pierre Gasly, although as they come through Ferradura, he's much closer this time around.
Verstappen closing in. Will he have a look down the inside? No, not on that occasion. Has to hold on behind, but Pierre Gasly coming under pressure here. Gasly, who started down in 13th, is a good start for the Frenchman. Right now, Alpine looking to bag big points, double points at the moment, with Ocon up in 4th, trying to hunt down Williams in the Constructors' Championship. Brief yellow flag out in Sector 2. I wonder if that might have been Ollie Behrman a little further back.
Yeah, Behrman losing places in the middle sector. He's had a little run off, probably into turn 7. Riding on board, Max Verstappen being very close to the back of Pierre Gasly, squeezing on the gas coming out of turn 12. Norris is getting closer to Russell out front. It sets another fastest lap, but Verstappen may be about to line up another pass. Yeah, Norris closing in, gets within a second. You don't get DRS in these conditions though, so that rear wing will stay shut. Verstappen though lining up that pass to the inside of the Senna S's. Gasly makes it rather easy for him, taking a very wide line, cuts back in through the middle part of the Senna S. Actually, Gasly gets the better run out, but Verstappen with the power down towards turn 4 has that position sealed, and Norris and Gasly just has to settle behind, and just behind Gasly, well, Lewis Hamilton's still lurking. Intimidation factor for Verstappen there. If you're Gasly in an Alpine, you know that this guy is going to come through sooner or later. So we get another shot at the start, and it was just a brilliant launch from George Russell in slippery conditions. Came up the inside of Lando Norris. Norris just didn't get away well, had a load of wheel spin. Liam Lawson lost out plenty in the first couple of corners as well. That allowed Charles Leclerc through. And Verstappen just looked like he swept around the outside of a couple of cars at turn 3. This is the sound of Russell. Second gear start from him on the inside, and you can just hear no wheel spin at all. Perfectly measured from George Russell on the throttle. Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda as well, just behind, not afraid to get his elbows out, racing in the middle of a sandwich really, between Esteban Ocon, who he had on his left, Liam Lawson, his teammate, on his right, managed to make that move. This is the sound of Max Verstappen's start, and it was a beautiful start for Verstappen. Had to get on the brakes quite early though, with cars everywhere he looked, but just keeping it neat and tidy around the outside. Yeah, he was past Behrman before Behrman got moving. Another fantastic getaway from Russell, similar to that of George Russell, and then goes round the outside of Bottas, of Williams as well. And it was really a fantastic start from Verstappen. Did everything he needed to do and didn't really take risk with it either. Perez as well, also spinning out in the early laps, all on his own really, managing to get it back around again. He's joined up at the back down in 17th, only ahead of Zhou Guanyu. Back up front though, the gap, Norris is starting to push. He's still got the fastest lap, and he is closing 7/10 of a second between Russell and Norris. Norris has the fastest lap. And Verstappen clears Alonso, up into 8th position now for Max Verstappen, who is really making mincemeat of some of the midfielders. He's passed up into 8th place. He's gained nearly 10 places in just over 5 laps. This the sound of George Russell just having to go down a gear as he makes his way through the left-hander that approaches Jung Zhao into the braking zone. Uphill now on the throttle. Norris hits the apex nicely. The starting procedure infringement involving Russell, Tsunoda and Lawson has also been noted, along with Lando Norris, in that separate notification that we got during the little delay that we had for the aborted start. But across the line for lap 7 of 70, Russell still leads Norris
Norris, Tsunoda third, Ocon, Leclerc the top 5. Then comes Lawson. Piastri is 7th ahead of Verstappen, who is pushing, and he's just taken the fastest lap of the race so far. Alonso and Gasly round out the point scorers. Then comes Hamilton in 11th, Hülkenberg 12th, Colapinto, Bottas, Sainz up to 15th from the pit lane. Ahead of Behrman, Perez after his spin is 17th, and Zhou Guanyu 18th at last. No Alex Albon and no Lance Stroll in this race. Albon crashing in qualifying and Stroll crashing out in the formation lap in his Aston Martin. So just 18 cars remain then in this race as Lando Norris is still pushing hard.
So the next person for Verstappen is Oscar Piastri, Norris's McLaren teammate. He's 2.2 seconds behind at the moment, setting a fastest of everybody first sector on this next lap. But McLaren are going to want him to keep Verstappen back a lot more effectively than the other people have done so far.
I think Alonso just waved Verstappen through on the run down to turn 4.
It's been a chaotic start with an aborted lap and then a bit of a delay, but we got going and Lando Norris lost the lead into turn 1. George Russell leads this race for Mercedes, the second the gap, with rain falling and the intensity changing all the time. Tsunoda is third, but it's Max Verstappen with a brilliant start from 17th, carving his way through the field. He's already up to 8th as we start lap 8 of 70. Right then, Russell does indeed lead. Now the gap 1.2 seconds, so Norris needs to try and close up here because Verstappen is working his way through, but this is where Piastri needs to play that team game. He needs to try and hold up Max Verstappen as long as he can.
Yeah, the drivers all searching for the wet part of the track now, down towards turn 4, trying to keep these intermediate tyres in check because the track is drying up fairly quickly. Verstappen is 1 second quicker than Piastri, and in fact, on lap 8, as they head into Tecido de Largo, turn 4, he is on the tail of the first of the McLarens for 7th place. Can Piastri now do a team job and keep Verstappen behind?
Well, based off the sprint where he allowed his teammate through to take the win, Piastri has shown he's willing to play the team game, but he's not in the podium position right now, so he has prime opportunity to hold Verstappen back for as long as he can. Norris needs to take a big haul of points out of Max Verstappen in this race. After the sprint, he's got 44 points to overhaul from Max Verstappen, but the start Verstappen has had, he is absolutely forcing his way through the field. But now, this is the sound of the Dutchman coming through the left-hander of turn 11, bunched up behind Piastri. The move will surely come into the first of the center S's if he can line it up out of Junsao.
So this is the exit then of Junsao, on board with Max Verstappen, coming up the hill with the McLaren firmly in his sight. He's so fast, you have to say, so clinical in these sort of situations at carving through from a midfield or tail end starting point on the grid. He does it like no one else in the field, and now he is menacing the back of Oscar Piastri, who's hanging on for the moment, still in 7th position.
Oliver Behrman has just been given a penalty, by the way, of 10 seconds for an incident with Franco Colapinto. So that's happening further back. Colapinto still running in 13th. Behrman now down to 16th. But into turn 4, further up front in 8th. Verstappen still closing into the braking zone of turn 4, but cannot find a way through on the Australian in the McLaren ahead.
No, the last move, I think Alonso was an honorary teammate of Max Verstappen for the day. Waved him past into turn 4. The move that Max put on Gasly was fairly straightforward. Hamilton also. But now we're finding a driver that's going to want to fight Max for everything he's got. So far, when you're in a midfield car and you see the championship leader coming up behind you so early in the race, you know he's a man on a mission and you don't want to risk a crash with a guy that's inevitably going to pass.
The ride is really bad. Car bouncing so much.
Hamilton, the ride is really bad. The car is bouncing so much. It's not the first time we've heard that radio message from either Mercedes driver, but Hamilton clearly feeling the brunt of it all throughout this weekend. He's still outside of the top 10, down in 11th. He's about 6/10 back from Pierre Gasly, who is ahead of him. Gasly in the Alpine currently rounds out the final points paying position. On to the main straight then. Lap 10 of 70. Piastri still ahead of Verstappen, who dives down the inside through turn 1. Lovely move from Verstappen, but it felt like he caught Piastri napping. Piastri is going to try and cut back through the left-hander of 3. Can he carry the momentum? Gets a bit of a wiggle on the front end. That's going to cost him momentum. Verstappen through on the McLaren and up into 7th.
Easy peasy. He's just so much quicker than anyone else. Piastri never saw that one coming. Verstappen has way more grip than him and just dived down the inside. Piastri acted in a similar way as Alonso and Gasly. Door wide open. Come on through then.
So Verstappen's 8th, but it's effectively a net 6th because Lawson and Tsunoda, when he catches them, are just going to let him straight by. And he's only 11 seconds behind Norris. Less than that, 10 seconds behind Norris. He could win this race at this rate, Verstappen.
He could be there in the next 10 laps, couldn't he?
Oh, and this is the sound of a spinning Oliver Behrman.
Ollie, we have a 10-second penalty for the collision with Colapinto.
Right. He didn't even lose any time.
That was Behrman's response. He kind of just sort of biffed into the back of Colapinto, and then, well, he's right. The man who came off worse was Ollie Behrman in that respect.
The Verstappen move, we're seeing it again. He's from 2 car lengths back on Piastri, who brakes so conservatively. Obviously doesn't want to snatch a front tyre, but how Verstappen catches him unaware like that. You think when Max goes for the move that he's going to sail straight on. There's no way he can brake that late, but he calmly turns it in, makes an apex, and disappears up the road. He's now a second and a half clear of Oscar Piastri. He's on the back of Lawson, weaving on the way down to turn 4 to make sure that Lawson knows exactly who's behind and that he means business. And this will very soon be Verstappen up to 6th.
Lawson in 6th in the RB, perhaps the Red Bull junior or sister team, and Lawson trying to put himself in the frame to be firmly Max Verstappen's teammate next year. Verstappen is the man behind the Kiwi now. Does he let Verstappen down the inside? He turns into the right-hander, he sees Verstappen and he lets him through nicely. An easier move for Max Verstappen in 6th now. Lawson down to 7th.
Yeah, I mean, there could be an awkward conversation really with the RB drivers acting as extra teammates to the Red Bull team. Is the Red Bull B team? They're saying they're trying to distance themselves and be a team in their own right, but Liam Lawson certainly just acted like an extra teammate there to Verstappen, who makes his way up to 6th place. Dived out the way as if it was a blue flag situation.
So Lawson then down to 7th. Piastri is now right behind him. We've got a yellow flag out in Sector 3 as we come across for lap 12 of 70, and it's Lewis Hamilton who is off at the exit of Jung Sao, manages to skid across the grass and rejoin just ahead of a fast-charging Franco Colapinto, who will surely be able to carry a little bit more momentum now and try and find a move down the inside of Hamilton coming into turn 1. Indeed, Colapinto shows his nose. Hamilton to the outside, Colapinto to the inside. Nice bit of racing experience for Franco Colapinto, but Hamilton's not making it too easy for him. Keeps that Mercedes on the inside, but the drive that Colapinto gets out of turn 2 through the left-hander of 3 sees him in front, and Colapinto now up into 12th with a huge contingent of fans here celebrating him on.
Now I'm looking at the lap times. Verstappen's lapping in 24.1, but so is Norris, and Russell's even quicker. So although he's carved through the field so far like a knife through butter, I'm not so sure. We'll have to see what his pace is like when he gets into clear air. But at the moment, Russell and Norris are showing similar sort of pace to him.
Yeah, but he just did half the lap stuck behind Lawson on the last tour. He comes through the first sector and sets the fastest of anyone with clear space. He does the fastest middle sector of anyone with clear space. He's about to take a clean second out of Charles Leclerc in 1 lap alone here. Honestly, he's on a different planet right now, Verstappen. He's making everyone else look so second-rate with this charge.
This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton and how he ended up into the runoff area of Jung Sao, into the braking zone. And that's the sound of him not making the left-hander and having to go onto the grass and rally style his way back on.
Verstappen 1.3 seconds quicker than Leclerc on the last lap. He's 10.5 seconds away from the race lead. I think he's the favourite for the race right now, and we're only on lap 13 and he started in 17th position.
Is he taking too much out of these intermediate tyres though? Is that a possibility even?
That'll be what everyone else is clinging to. There's still rain falling and we know the rain could get heavier, but the pace that he's showing in his early stages, maybe everyone else is managing more than him, but he's launched himself so high up the field from he only out-qualified 2 cars on the grid, and now he's only got 5 to go, one of which is Yuki Tsunoda, who will jump out of the way. He's just got so much confidence. He's now on the tail of the Ferrari so quickly. Charles Leclerc started 6th, Max Verstappen started 17th. They are 3rd and 1st in the World Championship, and in 13 laps they're together on the track.
It's almost like 2016 all over again, where Verstappen went from 14th to 3rd in the space of about 14 laps. We're on lap 13, coming towards the end of it now. He's currently in 6th.
Now expect this rain till lap 30.
Lap 30 then is this same amount of rain then, according to Piastri's radio. He's currently in 8th, looking at the rear end of Liam Lawson.
So it's a persistent rain. It's not particularly heavy at the moment. We're on lap 14, so we've got 16 more laps of the rain falling. And those at the front will be hoping that Verstappen has taken too much out of his tyres to get into this position. But at the moment, he's unrelenting.
The starting procedure infringement involving Russell, Tsunoda and Lawson will be investigated after the race. So too, separately, will Lando Norris's be. But that's a separate infringement than Russell, Tsunoda and Lawson. So perhaps the two being treated slightly differently in isolation there. Norris is 8/10 behind George Russell right now in the fight for the lead. Then comes Tsunoda in 3rd in his own fight with Esteban Ocon. Charles Leclerc is 5th. Verstappen now 6th. Lawson, Piastri, Alonso, Gasly are the top 10. And they are your point scorers. But that was just the sound of Sergio Perez trying to get down the inside out of the exit of turn 4 for Behrman, who was squeezing Perez right to the inside, and Perez just had to get out of the throttle in the end. That could have ended quite nastily, but Behrman 15th, Perez down in 16th.
So Russell leads still by that 1 second over Lando Norris, who is stuck at that distance to the Mercedes that's leading. Then there's a big gap emerging. 7 seconds now between Norris and Tsunoda, who's running in 3rd, doing a fantastic job as the rain falls more and more in the final sector. He's got Ocon, Leclerc and now Verstappen for company. So there's 4 cars all in a train for 3rd position, and those guys are losing about half a second a lap to the top 2.
Into turn 1 then, that battle for 3rd is really starting to heat up. Indeed, Lawson has suddenly got Piastri closing in on him behind, but Piastri not making the inroads that you'd expect to in that McLaren. Alonso a further 1.7 seconds back, and then Gasly a little bit on his own in 10th at the moment. Just outside of the top 10, by the way, is Hülkenberg, Colapinto and Hamilton, who stabilised in 13th, just ahead of Carlos Sainz, who started from the pit lane.
Norris is closer than he's been for a while. He's fighting the car through Ferradura, the quick right-hander in the middle sector. Now he slows it down and they come down the hill to Pinarino. The left-hander in turn 9. This is the sound of the McLaren. He's got the race leader well in his sights now, and as the rain starts to fall, Lando Norris looks like he's trying to apply a bit of pressure.
That's the sound of Norris going up through the gears, 4th gear through the left-hander of 11, now into the braking zone of Zheng Sao. The red flashing lights on the Mercedes, clear to see from on board of the McLaren of Norris. Up the hill now, over the crest, through the left-hander, flat out if you dare in these conditions. Steady rain expected for the next 15 to 20 minutes across the line for lap 16 of 70. Russell is able to close, but on that straight just doesn't seem to be able to close up enough in that first, and that really from Zheng Sao all the way to turn 1.
Yeah, Russell was actually good through the second half of the lap and extended the gap once again. The lap times aren't falling away even though the rain is coming down. These intermediate tyres clear quite a lot of water off the track, so you've got water being cleared by the tyres but then provided by the clouds overhead, and at the moment it's pretty even in the overall situation of the conditions.
This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton going deep in turn 1, but actually taking that wider line, trying to hunt back Colapinto, who got in front after Hamilton ran wide.
Ocon has dropped away from Yuki Tsunoda, and Charles Leclerc has got loads of pressure now from Max Verstappen into Ferradura, 6 and 7, the right-hander over the crest, and Leclerc's going for the inside, not going to happen.
Leclerc tried to stick a nose down, but now he's got to look in his mirrors.
Yeah, I just struggling to overtake so slow on the straight.
That's Lando Norris, who's now 1.4 seconds behind George Russell, but the fight really is on between Charles Leclerc in 5th and Max Verstappen in 6th. Verstappen closing. Leclerc is trapped in a horrible sandwich, really. He's trying to put pressure on Esteban Ocon and the Alpine ahead without losing too much time, with Verstappen able to pounce with one small mistake. This is all allowing Yuki Tsunoda to have a little bit of respite and get up the road slightly in 3rd. Tsunoda 3rd, Ocon 4th, Leclerc 5th, and this the sound of Max Verstappen now round the final slight left-hand curve that brings you across the start-finish straight. He's going to get a face full of spray as he comes into turn 1.
And he's not close enough to do anything about Charles Leclerc this time around. This is his biggest challenge so far, having cruised past Lawson, made a nice pass on Oscar Piastri, and finally he's found someone who's a bit of a match for him on the brakes at turn 1. We know Charles Leclerc is quite decent on the brakes. brakes, but we're up against the front runners now. These guys were all happy with the conditions earlier on. Yuki Tsunoda still running neatly in third. Ocon's very good in the wet, and he's running fourth in the Alpine. The 9th best car in the Constructors' Championship at the moment is providing defence for a Ferrari and a Red Bull, and they're all concertinaed up, and this is allowing the top 2 to get away. Russell was 1 second quicker than these guys on the last lap.
Russell, Norris, Tsunoda, that's the top 3, but he's embroiled in this great battle with Ocon, Leclerc, Verstappen, who is 6th, then Lawson a few seconds back, who has got Piastri all over the back of him now, who is 8th, Gasly 9th, Alonso is 10th, who's just been told there's even more heavier rain expected in the next 20 minutes. Hulkenberg 11th, Colapinto, Hamilton, Sainz, Behrman is 15th, ahead of Perez, Bottas and Zhou, the last 2 runners in this race. Just 18 remain, with no Alex Albon, who crashed out in qualifying, and Lance Stroll, who crashed in the formation lap on the way to the grid, lap 18 of 70.
Scruffier lap that time for George Russell. Had just done a very decent lap, his best of the race, but he's obviously pushing very hard and made a mistake on the last tour. So once again, Lando Norris, who we ride on board with exiting turn 3, is looking at the back of a fishtailing Mercedes, and he's closer than he's ever been. I don't think he's going to be close enough down to turn 4, but the top 2 are right together suddenly.
Applying the pressure is Lando Norris on his compatriot George Russell. The gap closes to half a second, but Russell's driving a good race here, a good start off the line for Russell, holding his own, not bowing down to the pressure, and driving very well indeed up in front. Clear air in front of him, and crucially no car for spray.
This is big pressure though. Norris is good in the middle sector, he's right with him.
It's getting slippery with these worn tyres in the wet here.
Hulkenberg, who is not happy on his tyres, started to get even more slippery as his tyres begin to degrade. It's lap 18 of 70. Most tyres are around the 20 to 19 lap old age. Indeed, our front runners, 20 laps being run on these intermediate tyres into the left-hander of Jun Sao for George Russell and Lando Norris up over the hill. Russell, 8/10 the gap between himself and Norris, who closes up, but Norris cannot close on the straights. That seems to be where he's struggling. Can he carry enough momentum this time around? I don't think it's going to be possible. He's going to have to apply the pressure elsewhere on the lap or force Russell into some kind of mistake.
There's no DRS, remember, in these conditions, and there's actually no slipstream game for Lando Norris either. Couldn't gain anything on the straight, but he's very good through the first sector. So he's applying the pressure once again on the exit of turn 3. They're heading down the hill towards turn 4. Another vague opportunity, but so far he's just still too far back, half a second away on the straight. As the rain's falling, the track's getting wetter, and he's definitely more content with the state of his tyres and the conditions, but Russell's driving the Mercedes car exactly how it needs to be to keep the lead.
Verstappen still applying the pressure as well on Charles Leclerc down in 6th.
We think the tyre might become slick to medium in maybe 6 or 7 laps or so. We need to get to the rain and then make the right time when to stop.
As Hamilton and the Haas of Ollie Behrman going side by side in the run down to turn 4. Hamilton almost forcing Behrman off the road, trying to charge down the inside is Behrman, holding his own. The 2 British racing drivers fighting it out on track, and it's Behrman who is holding on to that 14th position. Hamilton now down into 15th.
It was done by Carlos Sainz on the last lap as well, Lewis Hamilton. This is going to be the sound of a mistake for the 7-time champ. Again down at turn 12, double front lock-up. Doesn't find the grass this time, but finds a huge amount of opposite lock on the exit, and a Ferrari sneaking through. Sainz up into 13th.
Once again, it goes from bad to worse for Lewis Hamilton. His teammate leads this race while he is down in 14th position and slowly losing time as well. Behrman providing the next nail in the coffin, sliding down the inside at turn 4. Norris then still trying to apply the pressure up in front, but the gap is around about a second at the moment now. It's ebbing and flowing, as too is the gap between Ocon, Leclerc and Verstappen. They're all fighting over 4th, 5th and 6th. Verstappen's at the back of this queue. He has carved his way through the field, started down in 17th place, picked up a million places on lap 1 and is having a brilliant run, but has now find himself stopped up behind Charles Leclerc, who is not willing to give an inch, and neither are able to make improvements ahead of Esteban Ocon's Alpine.
Tsunoda's doing a fantastic job, as is Ocon. They both just done a personal best lap of the race, but it was actually quicker than the race leader that time around. So Verstappen stuck in traffic behind Leclerc, who's stuck behind Ocon, who's stuck behind Tsunoda, but none of them are too far away from the lead.
Cars not driving a bit. They're blocking up, bouncing everywhere.
Understood.
Hamilton's been struggling with the ride quality of that Mercedes from the very first laps of practice in the dry conditions. When it rains, you want to have some good compliance, and clearly he hasn't got it. It doesn't help the front locking issue he's got.
The sole remaining Williams in this race is Franco Colapinto, indeed the only Williams that started this race. He's currently in 12th and currently in front of the man that will take his seat next year. Carlos Sainz will become the Williams driver for next year alongside Alex Albon. Where Colapinto's future lies, we shall see, but he's yet to finish a Grand Prix below 12th place, which is currently where he occupies as the Argentine. Huge fan support here, but Sainz should work his way past fairly quickly, although having started from the pit lane, Ferrari isn't carving through the field, closes up through turn 1 and will try and line Colapinto up down the Retro Aposta into the left-hander of turn 4.
Another lap has been chalked off the total race time as well, presumably for the second formation lap that happened, as Norris erroneously took the rest of the field through. So 69 laps for the total Grand Prix. It means we've got 48 to go, still a long way, and more rain falling, more expected. Plenty that can happen still, and Liam Lawson's doing a good job for Max Verstappen as well in the RB. He's in 7th. He allowed Verstappen through easily, but he's not allowing Piastri through, and Piastri is now 5 seconds away from Verstappen, and he is just stuck 8 tenths down on Liam Lawson. So the second McLaren is really falling out of contention, as Verstappen's going to have a chance to pass Charles Leclerc fairly well this time around.
Up over the crest onto the start-finish straight. This is the sound of the Dutchman, who is tucked up right underneath the rear wing of Charles Leclerc. Moves out to the right-hand side. We'll have the outside line going through turn 1. Leclerc squeezes him all the way to the outside. Verstappen holds his nerve, but Leclerc shows him the door. Verstappen has to slot back behind them on a gas.
That's some proper defence then from Charles Leclerc. Went to the inside, covered the place, fancied the challenge of Max Verstappen and saw him to the outside line, and then he had to back off before shoving a nose in on the inside. So Leclerc proving that he's up for the fight with Verstappen, but he's going to have to be up for the fight again.
Verstappen is going to try for a move down the inside, the double right-hander that leads you into the middle sector through turn 7. Can't find a way through there, surely. Leclerc cuts across. Verstappen holds firm, but Leclerc now really under pressure.
He was squeezing me onto the white line, not leaving a car switch.
Straight onto the regulations for Max Verstappen. We know he loves the rule book, and that shows how much he is trying to find any way past Leclerc, but actually coming through the right-hander of turn 10. Bit of a messy corner for Verstappen, losing time to Leclerc, but closes up under braking. Through Junsao we go, and up over the crest again.
The drivers are making mistakes, even the best in the field. Leclerc on the last lap, Verstappen this time around at turn 10. These intermediate tyres are worn beyond their best, and the rain is still coming down. The spray is getting more and more as well. And still, Tsunoda's holding firm in 3rd. Then it's Ocon with a minor gap back to Charles Leclerc, and Verstappen has to wait for another lap, and there is no chance that there was anything wrong with Charles Leclerc. I didn't actually see which white line he was talking about at that point, to be honest, but I don't think that'll be anything for Leclerc to worry about.
Russell leads 1.1 seconds between himself and Lando Norris. Yuki Tsunoda doing a good job to hold on to 3rd. Naturally, while Leclerc and Verstappen have been jostling, that's allowed Ocon to close back up to the rear end of Tsunoda. And then comes Charles Leclerc. Max Verstappen is in 6th spot. Lawson 7th. Piastri 8th. Gasly 9th. Fernando Alonso rounds out the point scorers in the top 10. And just seeing almost a bit of carnage further back in the field. Sainz locking up at turn 4 and going deep. Rejoined the circuit and almost took out Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, he had made the place of Hamilton, but lost it again with his own mistake. Ocon is right underneath the rear wing of Yuki Tsunoda. Everyone's scrabbling around for grip. Lando Norris still did a personal best on the last lap, so there's something to be had, but there are more mistakes in the offing as well at this stage.
Tsunoda coming under a bit of pressure now. Is the rain starting to get a little heavier through certain parts of this circuit? Verstappen is having to regroup now, having applied the pressure on Leclerc. Fell back a little bit that on that last lap around will refocus and try and claw back in on the Ferrari in front. It's Tsunoda third, Ocon fourth, Leclerc fifth, Verstappen sixth, all really battling over the final podium position. Didn't really expect to be saying that this season. Tsunoda ahead of Ocon, ahead of Leclerc, ahead of Verstappen. The other RB still holding on, Liam Lawson in seventh. Piastri has been right up behind the New Zealand driver for quite some time now, but Piastri isn't able to find a way through on the RB. He's within half a second at the moment, having to settle for 8th place currently.
Very dark skies overhead and the rain is intensifying. Still these intermediates are hanging on, but we are seeing more and more cars suffering with moments. Norris is still within a second of Russell, and lest we forget, he needs to win this race for himself. So we've got Verstappen charging through, we've got Norris still glued to the back of the Mercedes out front, both of which have got to do some overtaking for their own championship hopes.
Yeah, right now the gap would decrease if it finished like this to 35 points between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, but we've still got a way to go, before we get to the checkered flag. It's lap 24 of 69, coming to the end of it. Russell leads Norris, but Norris is closed in by 0.6 of a second. Then comes Yuki Tsunoda, but the rain is coming down harder. The skies are starting to darken. It is tricky conditions out there, and Charles Leclerc, I think, might have just come into the pits. He's peeled off. That's allowed Verstappen up into fifth, but Leclerc and Ferrari have decided no more. They come into the pits.
The rain's intensified, and I think Leclerc will be in for a new set of intermediate tyres. So they've seen his teammate run off into the runoff area. It is a new set of inters for Charles Leclerc, and they obviously think there's no way we're going to get to slicks. We're not going to be full wet. Let's bolt on a new set, and effectively they're trying to undercut Ocon and Tsunoda with this move. Meanwhile, Norris is half a second away from Russell. This is the sound of him in towards turn 8.
Lando Norris will be getting sick of the sight of that Mercedes.
Fox to overtake at some point now.
We can consider it. We'll think about it.
Box to overtake, that's the option that Norris wants. That would be the undercut. He really closes up, almost pushing the Mercedes out of turn 10 as they make their way downhill through the left-hander of 11 and into the braking zone of Zheng Sao. But it's the straight line that Norris is not able to try and catch up over the crest, up the hill, and Norris just losing ground on George Russell.
So all the teams have put more downforce on their cars for these wet conditions, but it looks to me like McLaren have done a little bit more downforce. Here's Norris's radio.
That's Lando Norris, who is closing in on George Russell. Within a second, actually just fallen back there. So it's on the rundown to turn 1 that Norris just closes up in the middle of the corners, but then cannot try and get close onto the main straight. Then it's Tsunoda, Ocon fourth, Verstappen now up to fifth. Charles Leclerc pitted for a new set of intermediates. He's fed out behind Lewis Hamilton down in 13th spot. So there'll be a lot of eyes on Charles Leclerc now to see where he figures. But we've got an RB off down into turn 1. It's Liam Lawson who clouts back onto the curb and loses positions. Finally, Piastri gets unleashed from behind him, but Lawson drops down. He should feed out around about 9th spot. So that's a shame. Is the rain now getting too difficult out there for these drivers?
Norris is right on the tail of George Russell into turn 10, the tight right-hander. Russell struggling as the rain's intensifying. Tsunoda's now 12 seconds away from the top two. Ocon in 4, and Verstappen is on the tail of the Alpine now. Norris coming through turn 12, then it's the uphill run to the line. Is it time to think about pitting for a new set of intermediates?
Meanwhile, Max Verstappen is closed up right behind Esteban Ocon. This is the sound of Lando Norris. Does he peel into the pits? No, he doesn't. A round to go again for another lap. 27 of 69. Russell leads as the rain pours down in Sao Paulo. Russell holds on, Norris second, Tsunoda still third. Then comes Ocon, Max Verstappen closing in on the Frenchman behind in the Red Bull. The rain is pouring down, Steve. The clouds are blackening above. Lando Norris has been applying the pressure on George Russell, who leads this race, but he cannot find a way through. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen, who leads the championship, has clawed his way up from 17th, currently up into 5th, but is getting stuck behind Esteban Ocon and Yuki Tsunoda. Cars out of position, chaos is ensuing. You're going to want to join us if you get the chance. Lap 27 of 69, and Norris continues to pile on the pressure for Russell.
He's as close as he's ever been. The rain is pouring. It is almost full wet conditions now. More cars are entering the pits. Russell slides out of turn 10. Norris is with him through turn 11, over the crest and down towards the final corner, but he's not able to stay close enough at that part.
Hulkenberg, we've got a yellow flag in sector 1, and it's Nico Hulkenberg who finds himself off the track. Meanwhile, this is the sound of Lando Norris, and as we are getting on board pitches, you can barely see anything from the spray that is being lifted up out the back of the Mercedes in front. The conditions have absolutely worsened in the last few minutes. Yellow flag in sector 1 for Hulkenberg, who finds himself right on the exit. Has he been able to get going again? I don't think he has. I think he's stuck there at the moment, and that has brought out a virtual safety car.
So, all of the top 5 have come through, but there is an opportunity for those behind to dive into the pits. Oscar Piastri is the first of those to do so. From 7th place, this will be a cheap pit stop for the second McLaren.
Here he comes then into the pits, the McLaren of Oscar Piastri. He's followed by the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso, but there are mechanics from all the teams gearing up and running into the pit lane. Piastri with a nice clean spot, but gets a little bit slow on the release, but does get out there. New intermediates for him going on. Russell stays out, so too does Norris, along with Ocon, Tsunoda and Verstappen.
They didn't have a choice. They were already past the pit entry when the safety car was deployed, the virtual safety car I should say. Leclerc emerges ahead of Piastri, but he may well lose out from this situation because those ahead will pit, and it may mean that Verstappen jumps Leclerc if the VSC stays long enough for Max to make a pit stop under these conditions.
Looks like Nico Hulkenberg is out of this race, by the way. He, we believe, is the cause for this virtual safety car. He was out on the exit at turn 1 and caused the yellow flag before that got elevated to a VSC, and we're just seeing a lone Hulkenberg. He's actually managed to get back going again, has the Hulk, and is rejoining this race, although he's fallen all the way down to last.
Virtual safety car therefore is ending as the leaders are right at the pit entry. What do they do? Oh, it's horrendous conditions.
And Russell is coming into the pits. Norris is also told to box, but these conditions within a lap, it is almost like a monsoon on track. Can these intermediate tyres continue to clear the water at this stage?
It has to be full wets now. Perez did that in the Red Bull. Mercedes are fitting intermediates for Russell. McLaren are fitting intermediates for Norris. It's still Russell ahead of Norris as they get out of the pits, but that's a big call.
Good spot with Perez down in 15th, but on the full wet tyre. Could that come back to benefit him? Esteban Ocon has stayed out and leads this race for Alpine ahead of Max Verstappen, who has also stayed out.
Tsunoda also pitted, so Ocon leads from Verstappen as we're back under green flag conditions. Gasly's going to come through into 3rd place, and those guys are just simply banking now on a full safety car, but more likely a red flag. And I think we're going to be there or thereabouts. The conditions are abhorrent right now.
You cannot see a thing, and that is just us looking on the television pictures that we're providing. Eventually we see the papaya orange of Lando Norris's McLaren emerge from the spray and the rain out through turn 4, but these are absolutely treacherous conditions in Sao Paulo. Esteban Ocon leads Max Verstappen. Pierre Gasly is 3rd. They have not pitted. George Russell is 4th. He has, ahead of Lando Norris, also pitted. Tsunoda pitted too and went on to the full wet tyre. Leclerc 7th, ahead of Piastri 8th, Alonso 9th, Valtteri Bottas the top 10, then it's Hamilton, Lawson, Sainz, Behrman, Perez the top 15, Colapinto, Joe and Hulkenberg, who originally stopped out on track, caused the VSC, has now made it back to the pit lane.
It is sodden. The track is so wet. The drivers have predominantly gone on to intermediates, but Yuki Tsunoda is on a full wet tyre. Remember, he was running 3rd place. He's now 6th, having pitted, and still we're under green flag conditions. Everyone is keeping it on track, but this is the sound on board with Esteban Ocon in the race lead heading to turn 1. He's leading the race in an Alpine, but he is so tentative right now.
Max Verstappen, though, is behind him and has been promoted all the way up into 2nd.
Ocon was 5 seconds quicker than Verstappen on the last lap. We're being told the rain is going to ease soon, but it is still throwing it down. everyone's tiptoeing around the circuit. I would not be surprised. There's someone headed wide at turn 3. It's like a bathtub out there. I don't know how we're still under green flag conditions and everyone somehow is still on the track.
This is incredible. It is like the cars are wading through a ravine, but this is allowing Lando Norris to get up and past George Russell. He absolutely drives by the Mercedes. Can Norris get it stopped into the left-hander of 4? Yes, he can. Norris then being able to make the move on Russell.
So remember I was saying earlier about wing levels and McLaren are maybe over-winged for the dry conditions at the start of the race. Maybe this is where it pays dividends.
Safety car. Full safety car called by race control for the conditions out on track. Norris getting that move done just before it was called. Esteban Ocon leads.
This has paid off wonderfully for Max Verstappen and Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. Alpine and Red Bull have called this perfectly. The conditions worsened, but they've actually worsened so much, and I think we're going to be into potential red flag conditions. And remember, no one has to make a pit stop at all in this Grand Prix because it started on inters.
But Verstappen is only 5 seconds ahead of Norris, so I don't think he's going to keep that position under a safety car pit stop. It's too short.
But he doesn't need to pit.
True, but
maybe his tyres are gone. If there's a red flag, he can change tyres for free. If there's not, then he's on very worn intermediates and he was struggling. The whole race is in the balance, and amazingly, after 30 laps, you're listening to the race leader, Esteban Ocon,
who last scored points back in Belgium with a 9th place finish, is now staring at what could be, well, a second career victory as he departs Alpine at the end of the year for the Haas team. We're still a way to go though. Lap 31 of 69. 18 cars still in this race. No Alex Albon, no Lance Stroll. Important to remember though that we don't know if a penalty might be coming the way of Lando Norris for the infringement on the aborted start. His teammate Oscar Piastri has received a 10-second time penalty for causing a collision with Liam Lawson, so wherever Piastri finishes he'll get 10 seconds applied to his time. But it's Ocon who leads Verstappen. 8.7 seconds was the gap, but it will close underneath the safety car as they all bunch up underneath it. Indeed, Esteban Ocon coming up to that car now.
So Esteban, rain decreasing in 1 to 2 minutes.
The track is incredibly wet, but amazingly those that pitted predominantly put on a new set of intermediate tyres, which is probably the right call to do, having made the pit stop. The intermediates are the race tyre. If everyone pits for the full wets, that would technically be the best tyre right now, but you're guaranteeing yourself a pit stop to go, whereas the inters can get people to the end of the race.
And the question now is, if you're a driver who hasn't stopped for fresh tyres and they don't stop the race, if it continues behind the safety car and the conditions improve, like that weather forecast we just heard is suggesting, then you're going to be on 30. We're just seeing Franco Colapinto coming in for fresh inters on the Williams. Then your inters are going to be 30 laps old against brand new inters on the likes of Russell, Norris and Leclerc.
They're not going to cut through the water as effectively. That means they're worn down the grooves, so they're going to be struggling versus most of the field now that have pitted. And whilst Ocon, Verstappen and Gasly have taken a big gain, they're now 1, 2 and 3 in the race. If the race is red flagged right now, they can put on new tyres for free, and that is a legitimate position. If it's not, the whole rest of the field is going to close up, and if they need to make a pit stop for fresh tyres, they're going to fall right to the back. It's all down to the flags.
Just for those who didn't pit, along with Ocon, Verstappen and Gasly, the only other non-pitter is Valtteri Bottas down in 12th spot in the South, but everybody else has been in at least once. But it's a big game for Max Verstappen, who was clawing his way up through the field anyway, but got bunched up behind the battle with Tsunoda, Ocon and Charles Leclerc, held on for an extra lap. Could that be the difference in his championship charge? Already has the advantage, but so far is really biting back.
You know what's quite incredible? How nobody skated off the road there. On intermediates, in racing conditions.
It was a lake.
The track is still a lake. There is standing water across the whole thing. The safety car's out. Everyone's driving at reduced speeds and keeping it on the track. But aquaplaning is everywhere in these conditions. Norris blasted past the race leader for most of this one, George Russell, because Russell was just feathering the throttle down the straight. So was Norris, but he was feathering it less. These conditions are so treacherous.
Colapinto into the wall, and that is a huge shunt for the Williams driver. 2 crashes in one day, 3 big crashes for the Williams teams across both cars. And you just saying, Jolien, that will bring out a red flag. It's amazing we haven't had a crash yet. There it is for the Argentine driver, losing it over the crest as you come out of Jungsao.
And that changes the race. That makes such a critical difference to the whole outcome of the championship right now. Colapinto is in the wall. He radios that he's okay. That was from 16th position. But now Ocon is a legitimate race winner, and Verstappen is in second, and they have a free pit stop to change tyres. They can put whatever they want on when this race gets resumed. It's paid off massively.
As the huge contingent, though, of Argentinian fans, and indeed the Williams garage, with their heads in their hands at a big shunt for Franco Colapinto as slowly moves inside the cockpit of his Williams. That has brought out the red flag then, so we will come to a halt on lap 32 of 69 with Esteban Ocon in the lead from Max Verstappen and Pierre Gasly the top 3.
So it's such a big call for Russell and Norris to pit, but particularly Norris with the championship in the balance. They gave up track position to Verstappen. You have to say Red Bull have nailed that call with Verstappen. At the crunch time, suddenly the rain came down and they wanted the track position. They had to trust Max to keep it on the track, as, by the way, the Alpines did with both of their drivers, who are now first and third. And in doing so, they have just given themselves the top 3 positions, all by just staying out and waiting for the race officials to stop the race.
That's the sound of Colapinto clouting the barriers. And I tell you what, Jolien, that incident happened a long way before he actually came to a stop, losing it just as you come out of Jungsao, sliding along the grass almost to the entrance of the pit lane, right on the outside though.
Yeah, it gives me nightmares, that crash. Racing here in 2016 in these conditions, that exit coming out of turn 12, you get rivers across the track, and on intermediates that just don't clear the water, your speed's building. That was under safety car conditions for Colapinto, but he's just a passenger. He's a rookie. He's done six Grand Prix, and you just don't expect it until it happens.
And they've got their heads in their hands in the Williams pit, and I'm not surprised that's 3 crashed cars in one day for that team, which was already struggling because of a series of incidents. For think back to here's Norris's radio.
I guess everyone can just change tyres for free now.
They can.
No.
And there's the disappointment you can hear in Lando Norris's voice. He knows what that means. Verstappen is now legitimately ahead of him on track, getting a free pit stop. As you are allowed to do that, change your tyres under red flag conditions. I just tell you why it's even worse for Williams right now. If it were to end like this in terms of the points, and we do get a full race, Alpine would jump up to 6th in the Constructors' Championship, whereas Williams would fall down to 9th, one but last. Big hit for Williams in the Constructors' Championship, potentially, and a big gain for the 2 Alpines of Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. But we've still got a race, hopefully, that we can get back underway. The order at the red flag is Ocon, Verstappen, Gasly, Norris down to 4th, ahead of Russell. Then comes Tsunoda in 6th, Leclerc 7th, ahead of Piastri. Then comes Fernando Alonso and Liam Lawson, the top 10. They are your current point scorers. Lewis Hamilton is 11th, ahead of his old teammate Valtteri Bottas. Carlos Sainz from the pit lane made it up to 13th, ahead of Perez, who spun out in lap 1. Behrman is 15th, ahead of Joe. And no Colapinto, no Albon, no Stroll. Hulkenberg is still in this race, but actually has been noted for continuing on the track after receiving assistance in his Haas. He was the reason for the VSC stopping on the exit of turn 1, but getting back going again. So we'll see what that comes to, but he is still in this race under red flag. Actually, Joe, we've just seen Lando Norris out of the car pretty much straight away, walking down the pit lane. What can he do in this break?
Have a comfort break, have a little bit of a relax. There's going to be a while probably whilst they clear up Colapinto's car. The cars will be checked over if there's any damage. The tyres can be changed now, and it's a complete restart. We're not even halfway through the 69 laps that we're scheduled to have, so you can listen in to 3 of RB's head honchos consoling Yuki Tsunoda Alan Permain saying Gasly's in front, you can still get him. Tsunoda was in third and has driven a brilliant race as well, and he's in the same boat as Norris and Russell. The top three all pitted. They're now 4th, 5th and 6th, making way for a new top three who chanced it by staying out, and it's paid off.
This is the sound of the RB of Liam Lawson, and this is why Piastri has been given a 10-second time penalty. They both went in side by side coming into turn one. Lawson turning in and finds the front right of Piastri. Round goes Lawson.
I think the problem, Harry, was that they weren't side by side. Piastri came from a long way back. He was nowhere in the field to make that move. Just completely got it wrong.
Yeah, miles back from Piastri, who's been following Lawson for so many laps. Remember how easily Verstappen passed Piastri? I think Piastri was trying to come from even further back on Lawson there, and it was never a legitimate move. Lawson's then had his own attack on Lewis Hamilton, bit of wheel banging. I think he might get away with that one. That was front wheel to front wheel in tricky conditions. I think Lawson will get away with that, and he didn't pitch Hamilton into a spin. But Piastri's certainly ambitious, and it's not been an easy first half of the race for the Australian.
Well then, red flag conditions. This is Max Verstappen in the garage. Let's see if we can hear him. Talking to Helmut Marko and his father, Jos Verstappen, there, as I think Verstappen runs to the back of the garage, perhaps for a comfort break. So lots of debriefing then going on between some of the drivers and their engineers, both RB drivers on the pit wall, getting quite the talking to from the pit wall about their strategy and when they are. RB, one of the losers in that, with Tsunoda going on to the wet tyre, losing positions, but he's still up there for a good result in 6th at the moment, as it will be a case of keeping cool, calm and collected for the Alpine team, currently looking at a 1-3.
So in round 21 of the season here, a 24 race season, do you know what Alpine's best finish is across both cars?
I would say it's got to be a 9th place.
It's a 9th place. They're now sitting 1st and 3rd. That is what the chaos of rain can bring, and two drivers that are getting the most out of it. And I have to say, a pit wall that's done a fantastic job for them. Ocon leads. He's looked like a front runner today in qualifying earlier on. Yeah, he was there. He was on the second row, but it wasn't an accident. He's quick. He's been keeping Leclerc and Verstappen at bay. Now he's got to keep Verstappen at bay, but he's good in these conditions, and we're still going to have rain to the end. Ocon might yet think he can win this Grand Prix for Alpine, which would be one of the shocks ever.
Esteban Ocon's best finish around this circuit has been 8th. Indeed, Ocon's best finish has just been the 9th place so far this season. Back in Belgium, Gasly's had 3 9th place finishes. Ocon's down in 19th in the Drivers' Championship. This would absolutely catapult him up the order, and indeed, as I mentioned, it would put Alpine up into 6th place in the Constructors, displacing Haas, RB and Williams. It would be a massive gain for the team that were one of the slowest, if not the slowest, at the start of the year. Here's Russell's radio.
Red flag. I said it! Should have stayed out. Into the pit lane. Follow the safety car.
Yeah, that's George Russell ruining the decision that he and Lando Norris made to pit under the VSC, or just at the end of the VSC.
Sounds like he didn't make it. Sounds like the team did, and that was your race leader for the first 30 laps.
Exactly. He's saying, what on earth were you doing not staying out? And I was just going to say, let's just take a moment to appreciate the sort of overall quality of Verstappen and Red Bull's performance today. Verstappen absolutely out of this world, from 17th on the grid, making up so many places so quickly. Now second, sandwiched between two Alpines. He's obviously now a hot favourite to win the race. Red Bull making the right call again, like they so often do on strategy. Gambling, no risk, no fun is Red Bull's basic credo, and they live by that, and they're not very popular up and down the pit lane for a whole bunch of different reasons at the moment, but they play Formula 1 on the front foot, Red Bull, and so often it pays off for them, and so far today that's exactly what's happened.
And you have to say, credit to team and driver, when Verstappen's starting 17th on a rainy day, we both sat here before the Grand Prix and thought he could get a podium. I don't know if we thought he could win the race, but you just never know. And he is just such a monster of a driver that barely ever puts a foot wrong. And he's so clinical. Not only is he not putting a foot wrong, he's not cautious. He's on the front foot all the time. and made light work of getting in the top 10 on the second lap from 17th, cleared a few more cars. Then you add in the team getting everything right, and McLaren can look on with gloomy faces from 4th and 8th as Red Bull have got their title contender from 17th up to 2nd, and with a red flag they are now 36 laps away from doing that in a straight fight.
And the other problem that McLaren have is that they haven't got the straight line speed because of that extra downforce that they've put on. Obviously everyone else has put more downforce on as well, but McLaren was struggling on the straight behind Russell. So Norris is 2 places behind Verstappen, but overtaking the people in front of him, we've already seen, is not going to be easy for him because of that.
We should have, well, we potentially will have a standing start once again, which will be a huge shake-up of that front order for Esteban Ocon from pole. Verstappen is brilliant off the line, and he's already had one great start from further back.
He'll be in the lead by the first corner, I reckon. And the only thing for Verstappen is that he and Esteban Ocon are a long way from best mates. Let's cast our minds back. Is it 5 years to 2019 with the Brazilian Grand Prix? They collided. Ocon was trying to unlap himself. Verstappen was leading the race. And Verstappen ended up pushing Ocon in the pit garage at the end of the race because he was so unhappy with Ocon's behaviour. That beef goes right back to their early karting days. Formula 3, they raced against each other as well. So Verstappen will be taking less risks with Ocon, I think, than anybody else probably in the pit, up and down the pit lane. But he's still in a Red Bull and he's still Max Verstappen, and so yeah, if he's not leading at the end of the first lap, once it restarts, I'll be surprised.
But Ocon will genuinely fancy himself for a crack at victory today. That's the amazing thing. In an Alpine, he's done half the job. He's now at the front, he's comfortable in these conditions. If he leads off the start as well, he will believe he can win, and maybe he can.
FIA have said it will be a rolling start as well. The teams have been informed by race control the restart will be a rolling start, but the weather conditions still need to improve at the moment. So that rolling start, I suppose that helps Ocon slightly to begin with, getting the start off the line, especially in these conditions. But you would expect, if it's like for like, Verstappen will carve through.
Well, it helps him a lot more than slightly, Harry. That's really good news for Ocon.
It's good news for Verstappen as well, and Gasly. That was a replay of the crash for Nico Hülkenberg. Hit the brakes on the white line. He's now been given a black flag because he continued after getting Marshall's assistance. Just dropped a wheel off onto the painted surface and found no grip in the Haas.
And that was Hülkenberg, and they really did get a push back by the Marshals and then reversed and managed to get that going again and rejoined the circuit. So a black flag then given to Nico Hülkenberg, who is classified last at the moment after that spin off, as well, the garages, indeed, Nico Hülkenberg's side begins to be cleared to make way for his car. Ocon then should take to the start of this race once we get restarted. Still no time on that. Verstappen alongside him, Gasly third, Norris then losing out down to 4. Russell so frustrated with being called in. Didn't sound like from the radio message that we gleaned that he wanted to make that call to come on to the intermediates. Tsunoda down to 6, Leclerc, Piastri, Alonso, Lawson the top 10. Indeed, the one of the incidents involving Hamilton and Lawson going into turn 1, we spotted that one looked like quite fair racing, and that is indeed that has been reviewed. No further investigation on that one, and the rest of the cars lining up. At 33 of 69, red flag conditions then for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Looking at getting a restart underway. No measure on when that will be just yet, but it will be a rolling restart with Esteban Ocon heading the field. We're currently under red flag conditions, heavy rain, black skies overhead, and Franco Colapinto in the Williams crashing out. He's okay, but that brought out the red flag, and that gives most of the drivers a free pit stop, and it's played into the hands massively of Max Verstappen, who's now worked his way up into second. He's actually behind the Alpine of Esteban Ocon, who hasn't finished higher than 9th all year, currently looking at the win. Lando Norris is down to 4th. Lap 33 is what we are stopped on then, and is the rain slightly abating? There's a little bit of light that's trying to cut through from the clouds, and we will get a race resumption at 2:02 local time.
10 minutes away then, a race resumption. The cars are now being pushed into place. And there's still so much that can unfold. Still the conditions are treacherous. You have an Alpine at the front who is not about to go and run away and hide in this one. Ocon has the advantage of a rolling restart. And Ocon, Verstappen and Gasly will be very happy with that because it just protects their positions. They're all very happy with their positions. Verstappen doesn't have to win this for this to be a success for him. If he beats Norris, it's a miracle from where they started.
Is that game over for Lando Norris if Verstappen A, finishes ahead of him, or B, outright wins the race?
Yeah.
Either one.
It's done. It's done. Norris had to be taking 10 points at least in this one. He's 44 points away. The last 2 Grand Prix are in the desert. Vegas is a slight wild card where McLaren can maybe take some points back, but he has to be taking points from a race where he starts on pole and Verstappen starts 17th. It had to be 10 points at least. That if he doesn't do that this weekend, let alone Verstappen add points to him, then it's Verstappen's title. Not mathematically, but there will be nothing more that really McLaren can do beyond sheer luck in the last 3 races.
Well, as the time comes through then for the race to be restarted in just under 9 minutes time, then the drivers, pretty much everybody getting out of their cars, going for comfort breaks, debriefing with their engineers on the pit wall. Black flag for Nico Hülkenberg, who is being wheeled back into the garage. His day done. Indeed, the grandstand still absolutely packed out. The rain still looks like it's coming down, although I think it might have just eased off slightly since we've had the red flag, but the conditions were absolutely treacherous just before it was called. In the end, Franco Colapinto was the one who found the wall, having just switched on to some new intermediate tyres, found the wall and spun out from the exit of Zhengsao down the grassy verge on the outside that leads you onto the main straight. He was out of the car, he was okay, but 2 Williams cars, 1 car not even starting due to a big crash for Alex Albon in qualifying, and another big crash for Franco Colapinto in the Williams. It's a lot of damaged parts. Thankfully, we've got a couple of weeks break.
Verstappen's actually now running down the pits with trying to get his helmet on at the same time, obviously realising we're going in 8 minutes. It takes a few minutes to get strapped into your car, get your drink and radio all linked up as well. And imagine if he didn't make it in the car. Now he's got himself up to 2nd place. All will be good. They're under control as Fernando Alonso puts his hands device on and gets ready to join the fray once again. 9th place from Fernando.
Won't he get a bit of wet feet running down the pit lane to his car?
He will, but then they'll dry them typically as he gets in the car. Just a cloth. Someone will dry the bottom of his feet. It's pretty much routine in Formula 1 to stop your feet slipping on the pedals. And so, yeah.
Well, getting bolted back into the cockpit of his Alpine, Esteban Ocon will line up from pole position. It will be a rolling restart. Max Verstappen will roll off the line alongside him. Gasly 3rd, Norris 4th, Russell in 5th, Tsunoda and his teammate Lawson, the 2 RBs, losing positions really after those pit stops. Lawson also finding an off too. Lawson's down to 10th, just climbs into his RB. Tsunoda up into 6th, ahead of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc hasn't really made the impact in this race we thought he would. He was doing a solid job kind of defending from Verstappen, but hasn't really been able to pull forward as much as we might have expected from the Ferrari.
Well, they lost out even more so with the strategy, didn't they, by pitting before even the safety car, and they haven't really had the pace anyway. Sainz and Leclerc both were struggling in qualifying. Sainz then crashed the car, had to start from the pit lane, and Leclerc, he's never really shown top times in the wet conditions.
Well, we will be a car down now. Well, we're already a few cars down, but Nico Hülkenberg, who did get going, disqualified with that black flag for getting help to rejoin this race. It's actually the first black flag for a driver in a Grand Prix since 2007 in Canada. I think it was Giancarlo Fisichella and Felipe Massa exited the pits under the red light at the end of the pit lane.
They got
yeah, I think they got a black flag for that. I think so. Somebody might be able to fact check me on hashtag BBCF1, but I'm trying to recall, actually, when was the last driver that got a black flag? Because you really don't see that too often at all.
That was flag. The race that 2008 was the race in Canada.
That was Hamilton and
into the back of Raikkonen.
Yeah,
and Robert Kubica got his win. So I can't
But
remember
they
2007.
Well, they didn't make it very far after that, did they?
Kubica had a big smash then, didn't he?
Yeah, I remember Michael Schumacher getting a black flag at Silverstone in '94 for overtaking Damon Hill on the formation lap and then not coming in for his penalty. I don't remember any since then. I'm not saying there hasn't been one by the way.
No, well, I would love, if someone's on hashtag BBCF1, let me know.
There are more important things to worry about today, everybody, but if you fancy that one, then please go for it.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a bit of time still until the race restarts. Actually, the race is going to get going at the roundabout initial start time that the race was always scheduled to start. So it was a good thing we started earlier at the end. So if you are just tuning in thinking, we're just about to start the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, well, you're not too far away.
It'll be seamless, won't it?
Yeah. Should we do the chain again? I think so. We did do up to lap 33 of 69 after 2 laps were chopped off for, 2 aborted starts, of which should still be worth remembering that, well, a penalty could well be coming Lando Norris's way after the race. The infringement of the aborted start going before he was allowed to do so, before the green light came on the gantry, is under investigation. And separately, the cars that followed him, the likes of Ocon, Tsunoda and Russell, who followed behind, they are all under investigation for the same thing, but it's separately being judged.
Imagine Ocon wins the race and somehow gets a penalty for that formation lap infringement. There'd be outcry.
Well, let's cross that bridge when we get there, shall we?
Can we not cross that bridge?
I mean, the other debate, I suppose, to be had is the free pit stop change underneath the red flag.
Well, that's a rule that generally people want to get rid of, and it's given Pierre Gasly his one and only win in Formula One in Monza back in 2021. It's one of those rules that is kind of very unfair, and it can change the order as it has done here. Norris and Russell were the race leaders. Their pit stop, even with the pit stop, Ocon, Verstappen and Gasly, in the interest of fairness, should start on the tyres that they chose not to pit off. But under the red flag rules, that's what they are. They're allowed to change the tyres, and so many times now it's turned the race completely on its head.
Yeah, I don't know why that rule's never reviewed. I remember it happened in Monaco 2011. That was built into a really nice climax. You had Vettel followed by Alonso and Button, or was it Vettel followed by Button and Alonso? I can't remember which way around the second and third were. But they were on sort of decreasing age tyres.
There's a 1-stop, 2-stop, 3-stop in Monaco, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And Vettel would have been in real trouble. I mean, it's Monaco, so maybe they wouldn't have got past him, but Vettel would have been in real trouble towards the end of the race on his tyres. But there was a red flag because of a crash at the swimming pool, and it never came to be.
Yeah, it was a bit of fun that was denied us, and it happens from time to time. I guess a safety point of view is, well, there's kind of on both sides of the coin. First of all, would you want to send out now Ocon, Verstappen and Gasly on very worn intermediates from the FIA's point of view? Feels sketchy. But secondly, it encouraged people to try what they did and not pit when it's really sketchy on the current tyres. So you can argue that side of the coin both ways.
And if you found yourself also in the stewards room making the decision, would we be getting a standing start once more, or would you be going for a rolling start? Is that the safer option?
Well, you see, the thing is, again, it's what it's demonstrating is the difference between McLaren and Red Bull from an operational point of view. McLaren did the right decision. Here's Norris's radio.
So at the restart time, there's possibly class 1 to 2 rain for 10 minutes and then nothing after that.
So McLaren did the right decision on the basis that the race was going to continue. You know, they wanted, the rain was coming down heavier. They wanted fresh tyres. They could have. It was the VSC. You gain time by pitting under the VSC. But Red Bull gambled, knowing that the chances were in those conditions there was going to be a safety car. So take the risk.
And interestingly, we heard Russell wanted to take that risk as well.
Yeah, and it's about big picture versus small picture. Small picture is our race position right now. Big picture is championship positions.
There's an interesting synopsis of the season going on here. Let's say if things finish as they are, Verstappen will have pretty much one hand and 4 fingers on the title. It's going to be effectively done as things stand. And Norris and McLaren will look back on it and they will have lost it with a lap 1 mistake from Norris losing the lead, which has been his bogey part for pretty much 20 races this year, and they'll have lost it with a strategy decision. Those are 2 things that McLaren have routinely let themselves down with and it's kind of surfaced once again here. Neither of which are catastrophic, but they're both things that they've got wrong, and Verstappen and Red Bull have got spot on. And as we see the blankets removed on Gasly and see some shiny new intermediate tyres on there, Norris must just be ruining that so much.
Well, one car is out there actually. Zhou Guanyu in the Sauber has just been allowed out to unlap himself and join back up at the rear of the field. So 16 cars then remain in this race as the Aston Martin safety car peels out of the pit lane, followed by Esteban Ocon. Then it's Max Verstappen. The second Alpine of Gasly will come third. Lando Norris is fourth, ahead of George Russell. Yuki Tsunoda is sixth. Charles Leclerc is seventh, ahead of Piastri. Then it's Alonso and Liam Lawson, the top 10, with Hamilton, Bottas, Sainz, Perez and Behrman 15th, and Zhou Guanyu 16th and last. No Franco Colapinto. Big crash caused for the red flag in these atrocious conditions that were just on the edge of that red flag being called. Hülkenberg has been disqualified. Albon never started the race, and Lance Stroll couldn't make it past the formation lap.
And now, assuming the tyre data on the Formula 1 app can be trusted, from having a tyre advantage, Norris and Russell, they've now got a tyre disadvantage because they looks like they've kept on their used Inters. They'd only done 4 laps on them, admittedly, but they've kept them on, the ones they fitted just before the red flag, whereas Verstappen and Gasly in front of them have got brand new Inters.
Well, they are now making their way out onto this track, just over 4.3 kilometres, 2.6 miles. And what was a 71 lap now cut down to 69 after the 2 aborted laps. We're on and we'll resume this race from lap 33 onwards. And it should be Max Verstappen who will class his way up through the field with the rolling start. He'll have to line up towards the back end and slightly alongside Ocon.
Ricky, these are not new Inter. Which Inter is this? Hello?
Carlos Sainz wondering why he might be on used Inters, not new like he wanted, but not getting a response. Maybe his radio might not be fully connected, or they maybe just not wanting to reply to that message.
The data says they are new, but I wonder.
Here's the restart. Ocon lighting it up now in the Alpine. How early do you go? He's got Verstappen right on his tail. This is huge pressure for the Alpine driver, and he waits and waits, and he's going to go up to the line, is he?
The rain is still coming down in Sao Paulo. We're about to get the Grand Prix restarted with a rolling start. Ocon will lead the field. Verstappen behind. He's not gone yet, Ocon. Moving left and right, weaving, trying to get heat into the tyres. Crawling round the double left-hander. The yellow flag is out for Oliver Behrman, who's found the grass further back. He's still running indeed. So has the Sauber of Zhou Guanyu. But we are back underway here for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix as we start lap 34 of 69. Ocon leads the field into the centre S's. Verstappen closing right up behind the Frenchman as they plunge down through turns 1 and 2. They arc their way round the left-hander of turn 3. It's Ocon, Verstappen and Gasly as they were.
Gasly's not gone with the top 2, so Verstappen's right with Esteban Ocon within a second, and then Gasly is already a second and a half back. Ocon has the race leader in his mirrors. I don't know how much he'll see because the spray is significant right now, and Norris is going wide at 4.
Norris off onto the Astro runoff, comes back onto the grass, right into the path of George Russell as they move through the left-hander of 5, side by side with Russell, who he managed to get by just before the red flag was called in the first place. Now Norris finds himself back behind Russell. Russell up to 4th, Norris down to 5th with Charles Leclerc closing in. I say that, Leclerc's just gone sailing on through the next right-hander.
And that might allow Oscar Piastri to go side by side with the Ferrari driver. I think Piastri is not going to make it through just yet. He might fancy another chance up into turn 10, but big error from Norris. He worked so hard to pass George Russell after 30 laps and a load of rain. He finally got his chance, and in 3 corners he's lost it again.
But a good restart then from Esteban Ocon, who now has a 1.5 second gap over Max Verstappen, but can Verstappen claw that back in swiftly on this lap around? Coming towards the end of lap 34, it's Ocon, Verstappen, Gasly, Russell, Norris now in 5th, ahead of Leclerc, Piastri 7th, Tsunoda down to 8th, Alonso, Hamilton the top 10, Lawson, Perez, Bottas, Sainz and Behrman the top 15, with Zhou Guanyu 16th and the last runner in this race. But on the main straight we we can barely see anything in the spray, and it's Lewis Hamilton fighting with Fernando Alonso. Hamilton comes out on top, down the inside into the centre S's. It's Hamilton who is 9th, Alonso is 10th.
The field spread is huge in this. Ocon is now more than 2 seconds clear of Verstappen, who's actually not been able to live with Esteban Ocon out front. But Pierre Gasly is 4 seconds back from second place in the second Alpine. He's had no pace on this restart. He's got Russell 2.5 seconds back, and then it's Norris. And Lando Norris is already 10 seconds or more away from the race lead.
Ocon is having an absolute blinder here, but Hamilton, has he suddenly come alive in this race? Having been really struggling with the bouncing in his Mercedes, locking up, going off the track. He's worked his way back up into the points. He's now 9th and right on the back of the RB of Yuki Tsunoda, who for so long in this race was running 3rd in the podium positions. Now it's down to 8th, and it's Hamilton who's looking like the stronger driver at this stage as they break into the right-hander of turn 10. Tsunoda with a slide coming out of the exit as they peak over the crest and down the hill towards Jung-Sao. The RB still ahead of the Mercedes.
Ocon's a second quicker than Verstappen. It's now 2.6 seconds the gap out front. Gasly's dropping further away as well. Ocon has launched away at the lead of this race in the Alpine. Hamilton now might have a slight chance of putting pressure on Tsunoda. We join the Mercedes man on board coming over the start-finish, seeing absolutely Zippo. Where on earth is Yuki Tsunoda ahead of him as he hits the brakes? He's too far.
You can just about see on board the red flashing lights on the rear of Yuki Tsunoda's RB, but not until the braking zone. Tsunoda holding on out in front in 8th for the time being. Ocon now 3.2 seconds the gap he has over Max Verstappen, who is in 2nd. Gasly is 3rd, Russell 4th, and the field is spreading. 5th for Norris, Leclerc is behind, then Piastri, Tsunoda, Hamilton, Alonso, the top 10. Lawson's within half a second of Alonso in 11th. Then comes Perez, Sainz is 13th, Behrman 14th, then comes Bottas and Joe Guanyu, the 2 Salvers, rounding out the field.
The spray is just hanging in the air. The visibility for those further back is going to be zilch.
Oh, and Behrman sliding round and into perhaps the barrier. Does he get it stopped in time? No. Nudges with his nose. The barrier was applying the pressure on 13th place man Carlos Sainz. But for the young Ferrari driver who joins Haas as a full-time Grand Prix driver next season, now trying to reverse it out of the wall, gets it back going again and making his way now towards the right-hander of turn 8. But round the Haas went, kept it going though.
Yeah, I think it's all pointing in a straight line as well for Behrman. Just got wide onto the less grippy where there's more moisture on the outside of Ferradura. High-speed right-hander, and as he picked up that, the tyres weren't cutting through the moisture, the wetness, the puddles on the outside, and he went spinning around.
Last lap around, it was a 1:25.7 for Esteban Ocon. For Max Verstappen, it was a 1:26.5. Ocon is fast out there and increasing his gap over Max Verstappen. Now 3.5 seconds. The Alpine driver looking to pick up, if we get to full race distance, 25 points. The sound of Lewis Hamilton, though, who is still piling on the pressure on the Japanese driver ahead of him, Yuki Tsunoda, coming into the left-hander of turn 4. Hamilton seems to be slightly reinvigorated now after this red flag. Pause, quick comfort break, and he's back on it and chasing down 8th place.
He's got a new lease of life, homing right into the back of the RB through Ferradura. Turns 6 and 7, double apex right-hander. There's a slow it down for the right-hander at the top of the hill, descending down into a low-speed, short-shifting left-hander as Tsunoda was having his mirrors full of Lewis Hamilton still. 7 tenths between the drivers in 8th and 9th. And Hamilton, having had really an awful weekend for him, completely out of the top 10 at all times, having many off-track moments, looks like he's finding a bit of mojo.
For Yuki Tsunoda, trying to crucially get some points back on the board. He's currently sitting in 8th. It was looking very good for him early doors. We thought he would fall back though, but a little bit unlucky with the timing of the red flag. Hasn't scored points since Hungary. 9th place on that occasion. Currently looking at bagging 4 if he can hold on to 8th. But Hamilton is really putting the pressure on him. Now the gap seems to have opened up and then stabilised slightly. We've got a yellow flag out in sector 3. I wonder if Ollie Behrman has had a bit of a slow exit out of Jung-Sao. now, but it's gone green again. Behrman now falling down to 16th place and last, having spun out chasing Carlos Sainz. But Esteban Ocon's pace out in front. Well, last lap around, actually, Verstappen is a little bit back on it. 25.2 for Verstappen, a 25.2 for Ocon.
Yeah, it's just stabilising now. Verstappen 3.2 seconds away from the race lead. Let's have another look at what happened to Behrman this time around. He's hit the wall a moment ago, and this time he just locks up into turn 12, Jinsao, and bounces across the grass. Many drivers have done that in these conditions so far today.
Steep learning curve for Oliver Behrman as well. Flung into this weekend on Friday to replace an unwell Kevin Magnussen, and he's had pretty much everything chucked at him so far. Still in this race though, but he is about 9 seconds adrift from the back of the field in 16th, trying to recover. But as we've seen so far, anything can happen in this Sao Paulo Grand Prix. On lap 39 of 69, Ocon leads Verstappen by 3 seconds.
And last time around, Verstappen just gained a couple of tenths on Ocon. We know the Red Bull theoretically is a much quicker car than the Alpine out front, so can he start to eat into that lead that Ocon built and apply some pressure and fight for this race win? Gasly behind us, just dropping like a stone. He was a second adrift on the last lap. That gap is now 5.5 seconds, so Verstappen is under no pressure from behind.
Carlos Sainz is chasing Sergio Perez down in 13th, Perez in 12th, and actually Liam Lawson is not too far up the road either, in 11th in the RB. Perez hasn't actually looked too bad this weekend, but hasn't had the brakes so far. Was one of the pitters under the initial virtual safety car, going for the full wet tyre before the red flag was called.
If the weather stays as it does, we think it'll be these tyres to the end. So it'll be about tyre condition and racing cars on track.
So is that what we're perhaps seeing here with the time stabilising? Is everyone thinks we're going to have to keep these tyres till the end of the race?
It may well be a little bit of that. The track is so wet that really is when it dries out, you've got to think more about looking after them. Sainz is spinning.
Sainz into the wall, applying the pressure, and then finds himself facing backwards in the barrier, and that has called an immediate safety car into the right-hander of turn 8, just a little bit further along from where we saw Ollie Behrman have his spin a couple of laps ago. Behrman was able to get going again with a light touch, but it's a little bit heftier from Carlos Sainz. The front wing damaged, and that is day done for Carlos Sainz, who puts his steering wheel on the front of his car and begins the procedure of getting out.
Second crash of the day for Sainz, who's just been struggling for grip, hasn't he, all day in these conditions. Ran wide at turn 4 earlier on. Started from the pit lane, had made a bit of progress, was fighting with Perez outside of the top 10, but when you get offline, you find that there's grooves come on the racing line as 16 and now 15 cars continue to circulate and clear the water off with these Pirelli tyres. But if you get offline, it's not had the same drying treatment of intermediate tyres clearing the water. You find wetter patches and you find no grip.
Right then, say Sainz is out, he's actually put the steering wheel back on and got going again. I don't think he had any help from the marshals this time around. Well, unlike Hulkenberg. This is the sound of Sainz under braking.
Yeah, he just actually hit the brakes on the white line, nose in, flicked round rear right, took a hit as well, and it was just opening up the corner, getting on the white line. That's exactly what happened to Hulkenberg. It's exactly what happened to Sainz. I have to say, I was surprised how quickly the full safety car was deployed for that, given what we've seen so far, and especially now Sainz is actually trying to get the car back going, but he's not moving, is he? He is still stationary on the side of the road, I believe.
Yeah, he did put the steering wheel back on and tried to get away. So clearly maybe having a bit of a message over the radio, but crucially he cannot have any help from the marshals. No, he did get moving, but has stopped again and is now getting out of his car. Not a good day for Ferrari so far. For 2 crashes in one day for Sainz, he's out of this race. Leclerc only in 6th at the moment.
I tell you what was interesting as well, they just started the race 1 lap behind the safety car. The conditions were absolutely appalling, terrible visibility, and you know, in very, very recent years there would have been a conversation between the drivers and race control. Are these conditions okay? What's the visibility like? But there was none of that here today, which is interesting.
The conditions were okay. I mean, everyone managed to get around. Behrman had a little off, Sainz has had an off, but that was more to getting on the white lines rather than any aquaplaning. The visibility is so difficult for those further back that everyone coped. I guess you don't know they're going to until they do, but the race control have got the race going, and it's still going underneath the safety car at the moment. Ocon still leads, Gasly is still third, but the whole pack now will close up again, and Ocon will have to negotiate another restart. And that 3-second buffer, it was actually down to 2.5 seconds when the safety car was called, is now nothing once more.
This is a big test for Esteban Ocon being thrown his way so far.
This is what I'm saying, mate. One lap, things could look rosy. Next lap, we're all bunched together. Anything can happen. Still a very, very long way to go. Keep your head down, keep focused. 29 laps remaining.
I like that as a radio message. Clear, think long game. Things can change. I mean, we've already seen it change dramatically with the pit stop sequence and the red flag. Verstappen was pulling well clear of Gasly, was trying to get back towards Ocon at the front. He can do that again, but the gaps have just expired between all of those cars. Ocon, Verstappen, Gasly, Russell, Norris is the top 5, and they're all bunched back together.
Norris on the radio.
Lando, there's been lots of offs. Most of them are white lines.
Reiterating what you were just saying there, Jolien, don't go on the white lines, you might well find yourself in the wall.
I quite like that as a radio message as well. Norris will know, but it's very difficult for the drivers to find the time in these conditions. You have to start exploring the limits as the track dries, because certain parts that were too wet one lap become usable on the next lap. But if you push it too far, you do what Sainz did, touch the white line that's not yet usable, and you hit the barriers. So Norris will have to use his own initiative, but there's no harm in telling him why other drivers are crashing.
Another lap then underway under the safety car. Officially it's lap 42 of 69, so this will be helping the drivers keep life into these tyres, which if it stays like this in terms of conditions, they're expected to go all the way to the end without having to do a pit stop. It's Ocon, Verstappen, Gasly the top 3, Russell, Norris the top 5, Leclerc, Piastri, Tsunoda is 8th ahead of Hamilton and Alonso. The safety car is coming to an end, by the way, at the end of this lap. Here's Leclerc.
There is another band of rain potential for the end of the race.
Just when you think you've seen all the rain, there will be more to come, perhaps in the closing stages of this Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Lawson's 11th ahead of Perez, Bottas and Joe 14th, then Behrman is 15th and last. Now no more Carlos Sainz after spinning into the barriers. Colapinto is out, so too Hülkenberg, who was disqualified. Alex Albon never started this race after crashing in qualifying, and Lance Stroll crashed on the formation lap. So 15 cars remain. End of lap 42 of 69 we are approaching, and Ocon has to do it all over again to keep his prime position.
Did I say I said Sauber haven't got a top 13 finish since June? There's only 15 left in, and they're running 13th and 14th, Harry. They got a chance.
They got a chance, maybe a few more. They might even be looking at their first points of the season. Right now, Alpine will be on tenterhooks if they can hold on to this position, or even gain the big points that will come from double points finishes with both Ocon and Gasly. If it ended like this, they'd leap up to 6th in the Constructors. That's a massive win for them.
This is the sound at the back of Esteban Ocon's Alpine, spiking the revs, trying to find a bit of grip, getting ready for a restart. He's got Verstappen weaving just behind him. These two are old Formula 3 rivals from back in the day. They've grown up together. As Andrew said earlier, they had a big falling out here 6 years ago, and now they are 1-2 with 27 laps to go in the race, and Ocon is set for one of the great giant killings if he can hang on.
Ocon left it a little late last time we had a rolling start. He's weaving right, weaving left. The line comes for the DRS, and Ocon puts his foot as far to the floor as he can, and he is gone. Verstappen goes with him. Gasly's getting caught though, because Russell is going to try around the outside as McLaren is squeezed by the Ferrari down the inside for Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris loses the rear and swaps out. Verstappen takes the lead coming through the centre S's on Esteban Ocon. It's all carnage coming through down the centre S's. Norris rejoins behind his teammate Piastri. The day goes from bad to worse for Norris. His rival takes the lead. Ocon is second, Gasly third, Leclerc down to fourth, then comes Russell, then comes Piastri, then Norris in seventh as the great battle in the midfield as well. Hamilton joisting with Alonso in the Aston Martin in front of him, down in 9th and 10th.
But there is the critical pass, and Max Verstappen leads the Sao Paulo Grand Prix on lap 43 at the same time as Lando Norris makes another mistake, running wide and dropping from 5th down to 7th amidst an average restart anyway.
Hamilton goes deep, coming into the right-hander of turn 7, trying to keep his position now right in between Perez and Ollie Bevan in the house. Is going to try and slide down the inside of Lewis Hamilton. Bevan will have the inside of the corner, forces Hamilton to the outside. Can Hamilton then take the inside of turn 11, the sweeping left-hander that brings you downhill towards Zhou? That gives Hamilton the inside, forces Bevan deep, and off we go for the Alonso Aston Martin, spinning off into the gravel, trying to hold it onto the grass, losing positions. What a restart to this race, but it panned out perfectly for Max Verstappen, who took the lead from Esteban Ocon coming through turns 1 and 2. Alpine now lies 2nd and 3rd, Gasly is 3rd, Leclerc 4th, Russell 5th, Piastri 6th, and Norris down to 7th.
Yeah, it gets from bad to worse for Lando Norris as this race and this championship is falling away from him. Still 25 laps to go, but he has so much work to do, and Verstappen continues to get things right. It was a good restart. He preempted exactly when Ocon would go. Ocon went at a similar time to what he did before. Verstappen went with him, tried to get the traction down, and managed to make the move in the first corners.
Lap 44 of 69. It is Verstappen who leads Ocon, Gasly, Leclerc, Russell. Then comes Piastri, Norris, the top 7. Tsunoda is 8th ahead of his teammate Lawson. Then Perez now, who is holding out the top 10. Fernando Alonso last lap around under the safety car restart once we got going. Found the runoff at Zhou, went spinning off into the grass and all the way down the order to 15th. Just behind the two Saubers. Bottas 13th, Joe 14th. Starting another lap then, the rain still coming down, the conditions still terrible. Well, we just had a safety car out for Carlos Sainz, who spun out in his Ferrari. He's now out of the race, and chaos presumed on the restart. It was Max Verstappen who took the lead from Esteban Ocon coming into turn 1, and at the same time Lando Norris in the McLaren with a mistake falling down the order in the runoff through turn 1. He's now down into 7th. This is very much swung into Max Verstappen's camp. He now leads by over 2 seconds. We're on lap 45 of 69 as the rain continues to come down in Sao Paulo. Right, has it settled down ever so slightly? Well, perhaps for Max Verstappen it has. He's now got 2 seconds clear over Ocon and Gasly, and they will just be hoping to cement and perhaps hold on to a double podium finish. For Charles Leclerc, who is just behind there, well, he's another few seconds back. We're just getting another look at the start, and it was all happening at the same time, Jolien.
Yeah, Verstappen has just got so much confidence on the brakes. He was actually a long way back from Ocon, but just fancied it down the inside. Ocon from the lead was very cautious, and Verstappen said, all right then, if you're going to brake like that, I'll brake where I want to go, and I'll have the inside line for boot as well. So through he went, cheers in the Red Bull garage. The man that started 17th is now leading, and from here, this is Verstappen's bread and butter. He knows how to convert these sort of races.
And this was exactly what Max Verstappen needed. It was exactly what Lando Norris and McLaren did not need to keep their championship hopes alive. The gap will expand if it stays like this. Verstappen nearly 3 seconds now out in front. At the moment, if he holds on to the fastest lap as well, which he currently has, he'll bag 26 points come the checkered flag. Ocon, Gasly are rounding out the podium at the moment for Alpine. Then comes Leclerc in 4th. Russell is 5th. Piastri is 6th, but has just been told to swap positions. Norris and McLaren realising they need every point they can get, but 6th will not be enough. It's small crumbs.
No, but Piastri does that immediately, and Norris gets back to 6th. Remember, he was 4th at the red flag. Russell has just come back past Charles Leclerc at turns 5 as well, and Leclerc has dropped immediately into the clutches of Norris. I think Leclerc's made a mistake, and Norris has got to assume that anything can happen to Verstappen. So McLaren, even though the situation looks desperate for them right now, they've got to work Norris back into the best position, because if something happens to Verstappen, Norris can get back to the top 3, then it's still on for the championship in the last 3 races. But as things stand, it's a very bleak picture indeed.
As things stand, the gap, which was 44 points between Norris and Verstappen coming into this Grand Prix, would open up to 62 points between the two title rivals, with only, 3 rounds left to go and 1 sprint race.
The championship could be done before we get to this penultimate race as it stands right now, and Red Bull and Verstappen have really turned this around. But Norris is now applying pressure on Charles Leclerc. He looks more comfortable now he's managed to get his feet under the table at this part of the race, and Leclerc continues to struggle in the Ferrari. Has a big snap through turn 2.
That's allowing Norris to get right onto the rear wing of the Ferrari, out through 3 into the Retro Aposta straight. Norris immediately darts to the inside, can barely see anything from the spray being lifted up from the scarlet red Ferrari in front of him through the left-hander of turn 4. Leclerc holds on to it. Norris is right there. Piastri 2 backing up his teammate in 7th. Leclerc, who had a bit of a messy lap last time around, managed to let Russell back through, and I think it's because he went wide at turn 4.
Yeah, he just ran out of road, and that was Russell coming past in pretty much the same way as Russell passed Norris as well on the first restart. Turn 4 is quite a tricky corner, it seems. The downhill towards the medium speed left-hander providing tricky braking zone, and Norris and Leclerc have both made the same mistake.
And indeed, from race control, the incident involving Leclerc rejoining unsafely in that turn 4 incident, coming very close to Russell, who was on the inside coming through the exit, has been noted by them. We've seen that a few times actually from various different cars rejoining in that manner. Verstappen across the line then extends his gap and puts in another fastest lap into the 1:22.4s now for Verstappen. 3.7 second gap ahead of Ocon. Then comes Gasly. Lando Norris, who is trying to now get back onto terms with Charles Leclerc in front of him. He's lost a bit of ground on that last lap as Leclerc starts to recover from his off in turn 4. He'll get a face full of water once more, will Norris, in the run down to turn 4. He's not close enough, and in these conditions, remember, we do not get DRS in wet weather conditions, so he won't get any aid from the rear wing flap opening when you're within a second of the car in front. On the lower points end, Tsunoda is holding ahead of his teammate Lawson, the two RBs 8th and 9th, and Perez has clawed his way up into the top 10, but has got Hamilton actually right behind him, and Behrman, for all his spins, is currently 12th. Norris running quite deep, coming through the right-hander of turn 8, but he's got his teammate behind him who is going to back him up as much as he can.
Yeah, he's not going to be falling behind Piastri unless he makes a big error and goes off the road. Piastri's just swapped places to give Norris the advantage. So Norris did just get wide through the middle sector. As soon as you go offline, there's loads of water there and you just lose grip, a la Behrman about 10 laps ago now, and Sainz about 5 laps ago to give the safety car. It is still difficult. It's still treacherous out there, and all the drivers, this has been a long Grand Prix so far. We've had a red flag, we've had a couple of safety cars. You've got to keep your head and you've got to keep your focus, because it's so easy to become the latest incident if you get things wrong.
Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull, who we haven't actually seen too much from, had a spin on the first lap which put him all the way down the back of the field, is now worked his way up into the points and is staring at the back of, the man who could replace him next year, Liam Lawson, in the RB. Perez looking like the stronger of the two drivers right now, applying the pressure through the left-hander of 4, but Lawson has the advantage of track position right now.
It seems every race these two are finding themselves together on track. They were together on the sprint, they were together in Mexico, literally banging wheels in turns 4 and 5, fighting for the position. Not best friends. Lawson's been brought into RB with a view to maybe replacing Perez for next year. Perez has had a difficult race. He's had the spin, as you mentioned, on lap 1. He also pitted at the time of the safety car, which dropped him further down the field, so he's in 10th position. Lewis Hamilton still in 11th position. Both of those guys just sniffing around for a solitary point as things stand.
Well, another lap ticks by, lap 50 of 69, getting towards the closing stages of what has been a very long Sao Paulo Grand Prix, in which we only now have 15 runners left. Indeed, we didn't have Alex Albon start this race. Nico Hülkenberg was disqualified for getting assistance from the marshals for restarting in this race. Colapinto crashed out, Sainz crashed out, and Lance Stroll crashed out from the formation lap. Alonso spitting out on the safety car, on the most recent safety car restart. He now finds himself plumb last in 15th, about 8.7 seconds adrift of Zhou Guanyu in 14th for Sauber. The battle rages on for 9th and 10th, but elsewhere the gaps are kind of levelling out at the moment. Norris is about 1.3 seconds back from Charles Leclerc in 5th. Piastri is right with Norris, having just led his teammate through for position, and Verstappen is edging out in front, 5.5 seconds the gap. And for a team like Alpine, Jolien, they will be hoping and praying that they can hold on in these closing stages and secure a double podium finish.
Yeah, the dream of an unlikely victory seems to have evaded them. Verstappen is marching clear now, 7 tenths quicker than Ocon on the last lap. 5.5 seconds now clear at the front of the race, but still second and third, and a double podium will be absolutely what they're aiming for. Gasly caught by Russell by 6 tenths on the last lap. Russell in the Mercedes led the first part of the race, having taken the lead at the start, will still be ruining the decision to pit. He could have been still in the lead. He's trying to make amends for it and trying to get back at least to a podium, and this time once again 3 tenths quicker than Gasly. That is soon going to be our fight for third.
Yeah, that one is brewing. If it did end right now, Alpine would catapult themselves though up into 6th place in the constructors, moving up 3 positions. They'd just be a few points ahead of the Haas team, who would fall down to 7th. Williams now with no cars left in the game, no points up for grabs for them, would fall down to 9th place, only ahead of the Sauber team, who haven't scored any points all year long. But you're absolutely right, we're looking for our next closest fight, and well, while Russell is slowly catching Pierre Gasly for that final podium position, Lando Norris has closed in on Charles Leclerc. He's now almost half a second away from the Ferrari in front.
Leclerc's got no pace at all. He's 1.7 seconds per lap slower than Verstappen. So whilst Norris is in 6th on the tail of 5th, he is 17 seconds off the race lead. Leclerc is now 6 seconds away from Russell, who he was ahead of only just about 5 laps ago before making a mistake. The Ferrari drivers have got nothing today. Sainz has crashed out and Leclerc has got no pace, but at least he's running in the top 5 for now. Yeah, and at least ahead of, well, the Constructor Championship rivals right now coming into this race. Just 34 points separating McLaren and indeed Ferrari, as Oscar Piastri has a little off round the final corner, manages to rejoin, but we'll have Yuki Tsunoda to contend with all over the back of him in the RB. Indeed, as they come down the main straight now, it will be Tsunoda who is trying to find a way around the outside of Piastri, who forces him to the edge of the track. Tsunoda cuts back in, but Piastri with the McLaren now back in front, making their way through the left-hander of turn 3. Little mistake then from Piastri that initially cost him 7th, now back up into that position. Norris still with Leclerc in front, but that gap ebbing and flowing between about half a second and 8 tenths of a second as it currently stands. Piastri lost 3 seconds with that mistake at the final corner, but crucially managed to keep the position at least ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. Still, this will be a decent day for RB. It's got away from them from where it could have been. Remember, Tsunoda was running 3rd and ticking along nicely. He too lost out in that pit stop phase. He's now down in 8th. As you can hear, what happened to Oscar Piastri. First of all, a lock-up. Second of all, a bit of grass. And third of all, no traction. But he just about managed to hold the position.
It just shows how easy it is, how quickly your race can change, how quickly you can make a mistake. You snatch one wheel and you're off in the grass, and when it's wet, it's almost rally style back on, and before you know it, you're under pressure from the car behind. If Piastri's making those mistakes, anybody in the front runners can make those mistakes.
Indeed, you got to keep your concentration. 16 laps to go. Verstappen is still marching away. He's unrelenting at the moment. 2 tenths quicker than Ocon, who's driving really nicely. 3.5 seconds ahead of his teammate. Alpine's still 2nd and 3rd. Gasly's just managed to find a bit of pace. A personal best for him, now matching George Russell, who's still within 1.5 seconds. And then there's the big gap back to Charles Leclerc, who's just done his personal best lap of the race as well. The track's starting to dry. Here's Norris.
And then a weather update on lap 60. We expect class 1 to class 2 rain to last for about 4 laps.
Okay, so light to moderate rain then from around about lap 60. We did hear that there'd be some intense rain perhaps in the closing stages of this race. It's lap 53 currently.
And that's something that McLaren right now would welcome. Whenever you're in a good position, you just want it to be stable conditions to the end of the race. That's what Russell and Norris had early on, and then the deluge forced the change of situation. Some drivers pitted. You're really stuck whether you pit or don't, and in the end there's a bit of luck that played out as well. Had Colapinto not crashed, we may not have had a red flag, we may have carried on, and pitting would have been the best decision. But as it was a great decision to not pit. And now McLaren, running 6th and 7th, with a pretty forlorn hope right now, would love the pressure to come on Red Bull and Alpine to try and make those decisions.
Talk of Red Bull, Perez is still behind Liam Lawson. Perez carrying some pace though down the start-finish straight. Lawson holding on to 9th for RB, and late on the brakes, Perez charging down the inside, closes the gap. Lawson sees him, they keep it clean, but that was really a big gain for Perez. Late on the brakes, much later compared to Lawson. Out through turn 3. Can Perez get a decent run here? Lawson's pretty good in the straight line towards turn 4. Lawson covers him off through the inside, and Perez will have to keep one eye behind him too, because Lewis Hamilton is just sitting there and watching, waiting. Hamilton, who hasn't really troubled the top 10 too much, came alive once we got the safety car restarted. Just seems to have stabilised though through the double apex right-hander of turn 7 and 8. Perez trying to sling down the inside of Lawson, but that RB driver placing that car in all the right places.
Overtaking is just proving so tricky today. Verstappen has kind of made light work of it, particularly early on, made all those places, then gained more with the strategy. But his move on Ocon is going to be the clincher of the race as things stand. And Ocon must be ruining the fact that he was basically outbraked by about 4 car lengths on the safety car restart, because Gasly's managing to hold Russell at arm's length now. Had he kept the lead, there's every reason to believe that Ocon could have managed to keep the lead for the rest of the race. He's dropping back from Verstappen now, a couple of tenths here or there, as Perez shapes up another pass on Lawson. Dummy move, that's a nice one.
Down the inside, wheel to wheel between the Red Bull and the RB. Lawson not giving an inch. There's wheel to wheel contact. Lawson, who's already had a couple of dices with Perez and a dice with Alonso as well, and he re-entered Formula One, replacing Daniel Ricciardo, showing that he is not going to let anybody through without a fight, regardless of what team you race for. Perez has to sit behind once more.
Well, he let his teammate through very easily, didn't he, earlier on? But
Hamilton's just nicked through on Perez as well. Almost slight contact there. Perez has just lost a position after all of that.
Yeah, Perez went wide. Lawson, he let Verstappen through super easy at the start of the race, but it's different when you're racing Perez, and it's different when you're racing for 9th position now. Perez is fighting for nothing here. Verstappen's fighting for the title, so there's a lot more at stake to allow Max through. Perez is 8th in the standings. He's not fighting for the title. Red Bull are not going to win the Constructors' Championship, and Lawson is fighting everything to try and beat Sergio Perez and try and show to the Red Bull hierarchy that he can do that. So Perez dived to the inside, Lawson held on around the outside, got his elbows out once again, and it was quite a nice tussle between the two. Then Perez went wide at 4, and Hamilton side through as well, up into 11th.
And in the end, Perez indeed out of the points now, and trying to refocus Lewis Hamilton, who is now up into those point scoring positions. George Russell is still slowly closing down Pierre Gasly. A nice little tussle between these two, both trying to match each other for times. Last lap around, Russell had a couple of tenths advantage over Gasly and is now within a second of the Alpine in front. So will this battle come up nicely for us before we see the checkered flag? We're on lap 56 of 69. Verstappen leads by over 8.5 seconds to Esteban Ocon. Then comes Gasly and Russell. Leclerc still a second and a half ahead of Lando Norris. Piastri is in 7th. Then comes Tsunoda. Lawson is now back up into 9th, having seen off Perez's march.
He drove on the side of me.
Lawson saying he drove into the side of me. We've just seen a replay of it from overhead. Jolien, what do you think?
Oh, just get on with it. It's racing, isn't it? Perez with a nice dummy move on the inside, left Lawson space. Lawson then kept his foot in on the inside. It was a tiny bit of wheel-to-wheel racing. No harm done. Whinging on the radio for those sort of 50-50 moves. It's a little bit boring now. After the last couple of weekends of these sort of moves being analysed underneath a microscope, I think that'll be fine for Lawson.
Well, that incident has been noted by race control, so we'll see if anything comes of that, if it is elevated or not. Perez, the big loser out at the end, down in 11th spot. The last couple of runners are Behrman, by the way, who was still in this race. I think had a few spins and offs and clouts with the barriers, still holding on in that Haas in 12th. Ahead of Valtteri Bottas in 13th. Zhou Guanyu is 14th, but he's got Fernando Alonso, who found the grass on the exit of Zheng once we got the safety car restart underway, and fell all the way to the back of the pack. Had a point scoring position under his belt, but now looks like he's applying the pressure onto the back of the Chinese Sauber driver, and should make that move fairly swiftly and get up to 14th. No Carlos Sainz, who spun out into the wall. Franco Colapinto with a big crash, he's okay, but out. Nico Hülkenberg disqualified from this race for receiving help from the marshals to rejoin. Alex Albon with a big crash in qualifying, didn't take part, and Lance Stroll crashed in turn 4 of the formation lap.
New fastest lap of the race for Max Verstappen, 1 minute 21.8, 6 tenths quicker than both Alpines running second and third. And that was the sound of Gasly flashing through into the braking zone just ahead of George Russell, still third and fourth, 1.1 seconds separating those two. But it's so difficult for Russell to make further inroads.
This is Hamilton, half a second behind Liam Lawson when he go for a late lunge into turn 1. He's tucked up beneath the RB, has a little look out, brakes much later than Liam Lawson, closes right up to the back of the RB, and Lawson almost has a little moment through the apex of turn 1, holds on to it as he makes the way through the left-hander of turn 3. Indeed, that RB looking like it is clinging on for dear life coming through the corners. That's giving Hamilton a good run out of 3. Lawson looks in his mirrors, sees the 7-time champion coming, and Hamilton has to bide his time once more. Lawson 9th, Hamilton 10th, and Perez still in this one in 11th.
Hamilton will now know how much later he is on the brakes at the first corner than Lawson, and if he's that close again, might just fancy a bit of a mosey to the inside and trying to pick off that place. He's gone wide though. Perez is now coming around the outside. Hamilton at turn 9.
Perez sweeping around the outside. Will he get the better traction? Hamilton cuts in front of his nose. Perez late on the brakes. Will he get the inside for turn 10? Is there contact? So close between the Red Bull and the Mercedes. It's Hamilton who comes out on top through the left-hander of 11 towards Zheng Sao. Perez has to fight another day on this one. Still 11th, looking at the back of Hamilton, who's looking at the back of Lawson. They would be scheduled to pick up a couple of points. Perez right now looking at 0 points collected, having started this race down in 12th. Well, he's only made up one position when you look at it for facts, but has had a spin in the early stages of this race and had a proper dice. Got a little bit caught out with the red flag as well, switching to the wet tyres just before it was called. That hampered his progress, but hampering his progress certainly right now is Hamilton and Lawson, who lie ahead.
Nice little battle this for 9th, 10th and 11th. Lawson beating the Mercedes and the Red Bulls still, and now Hamilton's managed to stave off Sergio Perez. He can get his head down and try and work on creating the pass attempt on Lawson, who's driving neatly. Verstappen now cleanly 10 seconds clear of Esteban Ocon out front. This was the sort of window where we're expecting a bit more rain to fall, according to Norris's radio from a handful of laps ago.
I feel like we kind of need it as well. I know we've had a pretty chaotic race so far, but I feel like a little patter of heavier rain wouldn't go in this.
Well, yeah, we're into a bit of a lull. Russell's still 1 second away, but overtaking is so hard. The gaps are all sort of evened out at the front. Russell's not able to make any critical inroads to Gasly. 8 tenths back. Lawson is under pressure, but really the battle for 9th is the best we've got at the moment.
And you'll be pleased to hear, Jolie, in that incident between Perez and Lawson reviewed no further investigation on that one.
Good.
Lap 60 of 69.
They've had some nice racing. It's good to see drivers going wheel to wheel through a few corners.
We don't want to over-penalise, because then we won't see it anymore, will we?
Well, when it's kind of no harm done, it's a bit of 50-50. Drivers are being given space on both sides. We don't need to look into it too much.
Well, the stewards have decided no review on that one, as the fight really for 9th place continues to hot up. Lawson is really having pressure put on him by Lewis Hamilton, by Sergio Perez, two much more experienced drivers than the young Kiwi, who've slotted in this year to replace Daniel Ricciardo after the Singapore Grand Prix, and has so far shown why RB and Red Bull have taken a punt once again on this young Kiwi, who indeed replaced Ricciardo for a few races last year as well, after Ricciardo broke a bone in his hand after an incident in Zandvoort. And right now Lawson looking to bag another 9th place. Has already had a 9th place this year in Austin, so looking to try and get his 2nd points finish since returning to Formula 1. That battle is happening, and now Russell is within a second, almost half a second, as they come under braking of turn 1 of 2 of Pierre Gasly's 3rd place.
Yeah, he's getting closer. Can Gasly keep performing under pressure? He can see his teammates still ahead. 4 seconds between the Alpine in second, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, but he's got Russell now closing in. George Russell, who's driven actually a very strong race today. He's had a good qualifying as well, got himself on the front row, got off the line the best, led the race, pitted when he shouldn't have done, fell down the order. He's worked his way back up, and now he's looking at the back of a podium position against a car that's not finished higher than 9th all season. Alpine have scored 14 points in 20 races. We're going to get to round 21 here, and if things finish as they are with 8 laps to go, they're set to score 33 points in a hit. That's going to leap them right up towards Haas and 6th in the championship. It will completely turn their whole season on its head.
What has been one of their worst seasons as Team Enstone, really, since the start of this year. Lots of managerial changes there as well. Now Flavio Briatore working in the background.
Lando, Oscar behind you has a 10-second penalty. We want therefore you to get close to Leclerc.
What do you think of me? I'm trying to go as quick as I can.
So Lando Norris is saying to his team, who are trying to get him to close up to Leclerc, he is trying to close up. Last lap around for Lando Norris was quicker than Leclerc, 1:21.7 compared to Leclerc's 1:21.9. Piastri does indeed have that 10-second time penalty. Right now that would drop him around about Lawson territory in P9, so it promotes Tsunoda for sure up a place. But Norris 2.2 seconds back from Leclerc, as Russell still continues to close in on Pierre Gasly.
Will Joseph on the radio basically telling Lando Norris to start trying on lap 62 of 69. He's just not got that much pace at the moment, 2.4 seconds away. He's trying to get close to Leclerc, but he's got nothing more to offer.
Meanwhile, out in front, Max Verstappen is doing what Max Verstappen does best, leading this Grand Prix by over 13 seconds now from the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. Then 4 seconds back comes his teammate Pierre Gasly, who is under pressure from George Russell. Verstappen is just having fun out there now, isn't he? Setting another fastest lap, trying to get the full 26 that you will get, 25 for the win, 1 bonus point for the fastest lap.
This is actually super impressive from Verstappen. It's fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap, just nudging down the time as the track's getting slightly better. He's at his metronomic best. He has had his mojo on today, and after feeling so wronged in qualifying, out in Q2, didn't get the job done at the best time, got a bit unlucky as well. He has made some amends in this race, and now he's a second clear of the field on that last lap.
This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton into the braking zone of turn 1, still looking at the back of Liam Lawson in the RB, who is driving through the middle of the corner, putting that RB in all the right places to keep Hamilton behind him lap after lap after lap. Lawson driving a solid race, trying to pick up 2 points for RB. Hamilton desperate to pick up another place, but right now cannot find a way through and has a massive wobble on that Mercedes coming out of the exit of turn 4, holds on to it, and they've left Perez a little adrift. About a second now Perez is falling back behind them, and it's Ben and Bottas, Alonso and Joe, the last of the 15 runners still in this race. Verstappen leads 14 seconds to Ocon. Gasly now has Russell all over the back of him. She's just dipped down to so around about a second, just under that. Then it's Leclerc. Norris isn't making the inroads his team need him to on Charles Leclerc. Piastri is 7th for the time being. We'll have a 10-second penalty applied at the end of the race. Then comes Tsunoda in no man's land, kind of, in 8th. Then it's Lawson, and then it's this man that you can hear, Lewis Hamilton, through the left-hander at 12th, up the hill from John South.
Russell still unable to make progress on the back of Gasly. And still the rain hasn't arrived. In fact, there's almost a bit of blue sky overhead as Lewis Hamilton gets on the straight and he's about to hit the brakes for the centre rest. There he goes on lap 64. Did you know Sao Paulo gets about 3 times more rainfall than London in a year?
Really?
It's a very wet place. We've seen a lot of it falling this weekend in Brazil.
I think many sort of refer to Sao Paulo as the land of drizzle. That's the phrase I heard.
That's how I refer to the UK generally, isn't it?
Sao Paulo, well, is Interlagos, between the lakes, and certainly 2 lakes it's between, really, and in this bumpy, undulating track. Let's not forget it was completely resurfaced as well, not long before this race got going, which didn't seem to do too much actually, but Mercedes really feeling the brunt of the bumps. And well, so far Russell has come out the better in 4th. Hamilton still clinging on to 10th place, trying to put the pressure on Lawson ahead. It's another fastest lap for Max Verstappen, who is just driving superbly. Pierre Gasly doing a good job as well, holding on to 3rd, just also now starting to search for the drier patches, or the wetter patches actually I should say, of this track. There is a dry line forming. That rain that we were promised isn't quite happening, and as they come down the Reto Aposta towards turn 4, rather than coming on the racing line, they immediately shift to the left-hand side, the inside of the circuit. It's not the racing line, that's where the water is, to try and cool down the tyres, to keep them within the right working temperature window. And Russell having to do the same, which is costing him time. He's just falling back now to 1.2 seconds. So Gasly doing all he can here to hold on to 3rd, which would make it a double podium for Alpine. And if they could do that, well, it would be a huge points boost. Yes, lap 65 of 69, and Verstappen is now walking away with it, setting fastest lap after fastest lap. The rain has eased off. Verstappen out in front has a 15-second gap. Lando Norris is down in 6th, unable to make huge inroads. And Lewis Hamilton is the sound you might be able to hear in the background. He's trying to get a few more points on the board after what's been a miserable weekend. He's currently down in 10th, but this one looks like it's Verstappen's in the bag right now. Indeed, this battle raging on in the midfield. Perez must be the most frustrated of them all, just have to sit and wait behind them in 11th place. Bernard's about 4 seconds back in 12th on his own.
Add 2 more laps to the run of Verstappen fastest laps that he's just put in. He is underlining his championship credentials. He's going to be sealing the championship in 3 laps time with this run, but it's the way that he's delivered it today that is such a statement, as Lawson has a good look in the mirrors at Hamilton once again at turn 1, and Hamilton's going to have a look around the outside. Doesn't quite have the nose in on turn 2, and he has to wait for another lap. I think Verstappen might have done about 7 fastest laps in a row right now. It's quite staggering.
Spain, the last time Max Verstappen stood on the top step of a Grand Prix podium, if you can believe it. And right now he is driven, well, a champion's drive for a champion. Will he get another notch on that crown as he will extend his gap over Lando Norris with 3 laps to go?
I will finish the race for the mechanics, but they did a very good job today. But my back is hurting, man. This bouncing is not normal.
It's Alonso on the radio there, who spun out into the grass on the safety car restart, and well, he's recovered 1 position, but clearly struggling in that Aston Martin, which was rebuilt after his crash in qualifying. Was running in the top 10 of this race, down in 14th right now, and will finish this race to pay homage to the hard work of his mechanics, which I'm sure will mean a lot to them.
Good on him for sticking it out and trying to complete a Formula 1 Grand Prix.
He's only ahead of Zhou Guanyu, who's a couple of seconds adrift, 15th and last. Now is the rain just starting to come down a little bit more now in these closing stages? It looks like it's just greyed over a little bit more overhead. Lap 67 or 69, am I reaching there a bit, Jolien? Or
it's definitely got a little bit darker out there. Verstappen has had 1 lap off his run of fastest lap. Should be interested to know, but he's coming up the hill now and he might be starting a new run as he exits the final corner, comes across the line, and he punches in the fastest lap, half a second quicker than his previous best. So if the skies are darker, they're not yet making the track any slower.
This is the sound of Esteban Ocon tentatively making his way up the hill at Zhengzhou. He'll know what's at stake here. Ocon, who has actually driven superbly this race all throughout qualifying as well, looked quick earlier on today. That was, of course, after the postponed qualifying due to the terrible conditions we had yesterday. Still rain all day, but a little better to go racing in as we are coming to the end of what has been, well, a chaotic Sao Paulo Grand Prix, but the last 10 laps or so have slightly dulled down ever so much, with Verstappen retaking or gaining the lead finally, has just been setting fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap, and so far has an 18-second gap over Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, who would, for Alpine, if they can hold on to those 2 podiums, jump up to 6th in the Constructors' Championship. Sergio Perez is going to try and spice things up for us in these closing stages. To the inside at turn 1, late move back on Hamilton. Sees him coming though, Hamilton not feeling like he has to defend too hard on that one, but Perez certainly frustrated. He's out of the points right now. He's gunning for 10th. That would see him get 1 point. Sparks flying from the underside of the Mercedes in front, who's now falling back from Liam Lawson and having to defend a little more from the Red Bull of Perez.
Scant consolation right now for Hamilton, trying to take 1 point. Not a huge amount of action for us in the last dozen laps of this one. It's just Lawson defending from Hamilton and Perez as Verstappen starts his final lap of the Grand Prix. What a stamp of authority this has been.
A brilliant run from Max Verstappen, who started this race down in 17th position with a phenomenal first lap. It's what we've come to expect from Max Verstappen, but the momentum actually hasn't been with the Dutchman over the last few races. Yes, he's had the gap in the championship, which he is set to extend over Lando Norris, but he has not stood on the top step of the podium in a Grand Prix since the Spanish Grand Prix. But for Max Verstappen, he'll only have a few more corners to wait before he finally sees the top step once again, and it has been a champion's drive from the reigning world champion, who has negotiated everything that has been thrown at him in terms of conditions, has made the overtakes matter, and has carved his way through the field, up the hill, over Zhengzhou, over the crest, with just the flat-out left-handers to go. The grandstands rise for a phenomenal race. Max Verstappen returns to the top step of the podium and wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. 69 laps of chaotic running, and it's Verstappen who comes out on top. And what about this for a podium? He'll be joined by 2 Frenchmen for the Alpine team. Esteban Ocon celebrating with his fist in the air before he even comes across the line. Ocon bags 18 points. Gasly bags 15 points. It's 2 cars from Team Enstone on the podium. We've not seen that since 2013, and they jump up to 6th in the Constructors' Championship, and the teams celebrate on the pit wall like they've won the World Championship. Charles Leclerc will come home behind George Russell. Russell 4th, Leclerc 5th, and Lando Norris loses ground in the World Championship, down in 6th. Tsunoda gets promoted to 7th. Piastri, with his 10-second penalty, finishes 8th. Lawson 9th, and Hamilton steals the final point in 10th.
Wow. It's been a long time coming, mate, but boy, was that worth the wait. You are the man.
Oh, yes! What an unbelievable race, guys. You know what that is? Simply lovely. I tell you that.
Was that one of Max Verstappen's best races?
He's had a lot of great races. I don't know, it's right up there, and I think it's more the situation that we find ourselves in, that it's so well delivered. The timing of it was sensational, and it was just a beautifully well crafted drive.
Well done, mate. Zario 10 and P2.
Oh, what a race, guys! Yes!
Well done, mate.
we were going to be there, right?
Funnily enough, no, I didn't think so, no. So well done.
Yeah, well done to Pierre and Petri. That's amazing, guys.
Yeah, that is.
For you.
The Alpines line astern. They finished 17th and 18th in Bahrain. Round 21, and they finish second and third. How's that for a career trajectory in one season?
It's huge for Alpine. The top three have all just had the day of their seasons. Max Verstappen stands up and launches himself into the mechanics. That is a champion's drive for Max Verstappen. There's still 3 races to go, but that will do it for Max on a day where Lando Norris and McLaren did everything right this morning and got so much wrong this afternoon. Verstappen was the other way round, delivered under pressure. The driver did superbly, managed to make the difference early on. The team made the difference around the pit stop phase, and then Verstappen, when he hits the front, is so formidable. He has delivered a crushing, clinical blow, and he will surely be champion for 2024 after all the chatter. But for Alpine, second and third, what a day for them. They are 9th in the Constructors. They've had a best result of 9th through 20 races. And on a day like this, where anything can happen, they've had 2 drivers drive their socks off to finish second and third. And it has changed the face of their season. That's the cheer you can hear as Ocon jumps out of the car.
Well, for Max Verstappen, it was like he'd won the World Championship right then and there. And for Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, it's as if they've won the race as they run over. Gasly runs right over to the team to celebrate. Ocon, who hasn't really been showing any kind of form over the last few races, hasn't scored since Belgium, is greeted by the team that he will say goodbye to in a few races' time before he joins Haas. He'll get one more podium, and the 2 Frenchmen who don't get on historically greet each other with a hug and a celebration. They can put their rivalry to one side and enjoy what is an absolutely phenomenal result for the Enstone-based team.
And it all really, the whole race boiled down to those 2 laps when Hülkenberg crashed, the VSC came out, and the top 3 in the race pitted. Russell was leading, Norris was second. They were comfortable to everyone else. They pitted and they paved the way for Ocon, for Verstappen and for Gasly to come through, and no one could ever make amends. No one could ever get back. That was the crucial part.
The gap Max Verstappen now has 62 points over Lando Norris. And over in the Constructors, well, it's not as big of a gain for McLaren, now 36 points ahead of Ferrari at the end of what was a frenetic Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Little lull at the end there, but pleased to get a race underway in the first place. A smart call from the FIA and the stewards to bring the start time forward with the amount of interruptions that we had getting the race done, and the celebrations are at a sky high here. Just to remind you of how the rest of the top 10 finished. Russell came home in 4th. If the situation had been different when it came to the pit stops, could Russell have found himself on the podium come the end of these laps? Leclerc 5th, didn't quite show that he had the pace of the front runners today. Lando Norris lamenting down in 6th. Ahead of a good run for Yuki Tsunoda, but for so long Tsunoda running in 3rd again. Pit stop error for the RB team there. Piastri down in 8th after a 10-second time penalty applied. Liam Lawson holding on with a fierce fight for that final point in 9th, with Hamilton stealing 1 point for his efforts in 10th. Perez, no points on the board once again. Behrman comes home in 12th, having been deputising for Kevin Magnussen all weekend long. Bottas gets another top 13 finish for Sauber. Alonso finished in 14th with Zhou Guanyu 15th and last of the runners. No signs who crashed out. Colapinto crashed out. Hülkenberg disqualified. Albon crashed out in qualifying. Did not start the race. Stroll started the formation lap. Didn't make it past turn 4. That's enough to get into for the moment. Shall we hear from our top 3 with Rubens Barrichello?
Hey Max, what an incredible race. Yesterday, did you have any thoughts you might have won today with the weather, or it was tough? It was a tough weekend?
Yeah, I mean, my emotions today have been a roller coaster, you know, with qualifying, being really unlucky with that red flag. You know, starting P17, I knew that it was going to be a very tough race, but we stayed out of trouble. We made the right calls. We stayed calm. and we were flying. So all of these things together, of course, made that result possible. But I mean, unbelievable to win here from so far back on the grid. Yeah.
Man, I need to ask you, the first corner, when you went to the inside, you saw there was a lot of grip, and then you started to use that a lot. The overtaking looked fantastic from the outside. Did you know there was a little bit more grip in the inside, because you kept on doing fastest laps and using that line?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's very hard to pass around here with the new tarmac. It's only one line that you can take. But yeah, I just knew that I had to go for it. It's of course always easy to front lock, just trying to balance that out, and I had confidence on the brakes as well. That helps. And yeah, turn one is always a great corner to pass.
Yeah. It was 17 fastest laps, so well done, Max.
Thank you.
It was, you made the crowd stand up all the way.
I hope they enjoyed it.
They did. Thank you.
Max Verstappen there, what a race. Started down in 17th, taking the victory. Here comes Esteban Ocon.
It's good to see you, my friend. It was nice to see you before the race. Did you look like you could have been on the podium since that moment?
I mean, what a day that was, you know, after the difficult season. You know, it's really nice to be driving around here and having, you know, the performance a bit leveled out, you know, on the rain. Someone very important to all of us said a long time ago that, you know, on the rain, the cars are almost equal. And that phrase didn't age at all. And yeah, I'm very happy to be today on the podium. I think it's been awesome, and the support I receive here from all the Brazilian fans is incredible. And yeah, I can't thank everyone enough.
By any chance, you guys work on a setup because you knew it was going to be wet? Did you work a little bit on that because you knew the car was going to be faster in the wet?
No.
No, it was just fast.
The car was extremely difficult, you know, on the dry. And really, you know, I felt at ease, you know, when it started to rain this morning and last night. I really wanted to get some lap on the rain. I love it here when it rains, and yeah, today has brought a special race for us.
Enjoy the party with Alpine. It was great to see.
Thank you, Ruben.
Esteban Ocon finishing in second there. Yeah. Rockets up to 14th in the standings.
What a great race. How tough it was to make that decision to stay on track just before the red flag.
Thank you well. It's incredible for the whole team. For the, you know, we had such a tough season. We've struggled to score points, and yeah, in these conditions, everything was possible. And no, we believed it until the end. 2 cars on the podium. I don't think anyone would have got that on that bingo card, you know, ahead of the season. So it's just fantastic.
So from the car that you had yesterday to the car of today, is just the wet that made it possible?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday the pace on the dry was good. I finished 7th. This morning we had a very poor quality, a couple of incidents. We didn't get a lap in Q2, so we started far, 13th, and managed to make 10 positions. So no, I'm absolutely buzzing right now. I'm just so proud of the team, you know, to overcome such a tough season. And you know, it would have been too easy to give up, but we never gave up. And yeah, here we are, both cars, P2 and P3, a lot of points for the team. And yeah, everybody should be very proud today.
Thanks, Pierre. Enjoy the time with Alpine.
Well, there is your top 3 of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Max Verstappen wins, extends his championship advantage to 62 points over Lando Norris. And it's the 2 Alpines of Esteban Ocon in second and Pierre Gasly in third. We will digest all of that in the Checkered Flag podcast, which will be available on BBC Sounds and wherever you get your podcasts a little later on this evening. Thank you for your company and sticking with us on that one, and what was an absolutely chaotic Sao Paulo Grand Prix. My thanks to Andrew Benson, to Jolie and Palmer, to the whole team. This has been an ING production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Couple of weeks off until we're back in Las Vegas, where the championship, well, could it be won and sealed by Max Verstappen then? Hope you can join us for it.